Hey, hi. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible and visible? Feel free to use the chat to let me know. We'll wait for probably about a couple of minutes for more folks to join us. So we'll probably give it till maybe 11 or 10. And until then, we'll probably keep interacting. Probably one way I'd like to get started is to get a sense of the audience. So, what I'd like for you folks to do is to give me a quick shout out on who you are and what you're currently doing. I'm just going to start a quick poll to understand the audience. Lovely. I'm also excited for today's session. This is actually the very first time I'm doing YouTube live. So, pardon me for a little bit of clunkiness along the way. A lot of things that I'm going to be figuring out along the way as I do this live. Like I said, let's give it about a couple of minutes for folks to join us. We'd love for you folks to share what you're doing in the poll that I've shared so that way I get a good read of the audience. And probably I can also then customize today's session a little more in that direction. I'm going to try to make this as interactive as possible so that it's just not me speaking, but also you folks can participate and have a little bit of fun along the way. Yeah, but on the other side, Ivan, I think it's also a little difficult to know what the audience is saying. Are they tuned in? So I'll have to be very clued into the chat to see if I'm doing a good job. Awesome. See a lot of product managers, a few aspiring product managers, a few associate product managers, and a few product leaders. Fantastic, fantastic. Awesome. So while we wait for a few more folks to join, maybe I'll start with a couple of fun questions. I'd like for you folks to share in the chat who is the audience for a deconstruct? Who are you doing a deconstruct for? Maybe we'll start with that as a fun question. So that way I'll also get to understand how you think about a deconstruct. Then probably go into a few more fun questions. Then we'll get started this session. Alrighty, I see a few answers coming in. Ibad says ourselves, Science says everyone, Himanshu says ourselves, Pankaj says for interviews, Science says whosoever uses the product, Aditya says for the not so well thought out, okay, Shubham for the interviewer, Akshay for people who want to learn, Achin says for all those who want to develop product sense, Tejas says to increase product sense, alrighty. A lot of interesting answers. As I start the session, I'll also give my personal perspective towards this. Got it. Cool. A few more answers are coming in. Akanksha says deconstructing a product basically helps understand the nitty gritties of a particular product has been built and why. Vaibhav says to get into the shoes of the PM who would have taken the decisions. All right. Ravi says to improve product sense. Smita says for designers. Hemant says for people who want to have proxy towards a product. Maitri says for PMs to understand how the product was built. Also, very interesting and some very well thought out answers as well. That's it. Let me move on to the next fun question. What do you do in a deconstruct? What's your take on it? Like, what would you approach in a deconstruct and how do you typically approach it? Try to make it crisp. We don't have to get to the nitty gritties, but just want to get a sense of opening questions on what do you look at when you think about a deconstruct? All right, Murthy says it helps relook at the fitment of the business model against the product. Varshini says, okay, understand why the product or feature was built in a certain way. All righty. Got it. Now, in terms of how do you do deconstruct, I see Palash trying to answer us, okay, why, what, and how of each feature that powers a product. Vaibhav says, ask the why for everything that is seen and built. Achin says, all the thinking that went behind the constructing the product. And therefore, that's what deconstruct means. Tejas, understanding the user flows, understanding the ICP and why the features were built. Awesome, lovely, lovely answers. Aditya says, the drivers, the levers for the product, segregate to controllable and uncontrollable factors. Very interesting. Prachi says, understand the motive behind building the product, including the who, what, why. Awesome. Some really, really beautiful answers. Great. We have about 2 more minutes left before the session starts, and I'll start presenting. Would you folks want to probably ask me anything to set for me to double click on specifically while I do the deconstruct? So I'll try to make sure I try to answer that. I'll try to be as comprehensive as possible during the course of today's session. But if there's anything that you'd like for me to double click along the way, and if I feel that it's relevant and for some reason I've not included it, I will try to make sure that I incorporate it while trying to answer. The second thing is I'm going to make this interactive. So as I present the deconstruct, I'm going to pause at a few points and open up the floor for you folks to answer a couple of questions, then get the answers, and then incorporate that back into the discussion. So that way, it's just not me presenting a point of view, but it's also you actively trying to problem solve alongside with me. And that way, it's a lot more fun. We'll do this for about an hour to maybe an hour and 30 minutes. It really depends on how we interact. Then I'll open up the floor in the last 30 minutes for a Q&A session. We'll try to make sure most of the Q&A is specifically targeting the deconstruct that we've done today. And if we do have a few minutes left, I'll try to answer any other question. Awesome. I'm just seeing a couple of questions to see what folks are saying. When you start with a new role as a PM, is it a good idea to deconstruct the product? All right, I will probably answer that question ASAP. Akanksha, you break down your personas. All right, I think product modules amongst. Okay. All right, Harshal, your question is a lot more pointed towards, let's say, org design roles and responsibility. I don't think I can do justice answering that specific question in today's session. So I'll probably take that as a question that maybe a few other folks would like to know the answer for in another session. But what I will do is probably start off by answering Malabari's question. When you start with a new role as a PM in a company, is it a good idea to deconstruct the product? I think it's a fantastic idea. And in fact, it is perhaps one of the most important things to do in the first 30 days that you spend your time inside a company, to really, really understand the nitty-gritties of how, why, and what goes into making your product work and why certain choices were made. Understanding that will speed up the pace at which you are able to make better decisions with your product, as well as make better execution calls and make better pitches to your leadership or to your management. So as a practice, anytime I join a company, I try to make sure I get into the history and geography of a product that I'm responsible for, right? Into looking at all the release notes, all the PRDs that were ever written, looking into all the documentation about a particular product, speaking to the engineers who have been working on that product to walk me through all the flows that they think are involved in that product functioning. connecting with a lot of cross-functional product leaders as well who engage with that particular product to understand the dependencies my product has on them or their product has on mine. Speaking to a lot of design leaders who have been responsible for that product, understand the choices that they've made to build that particular product, right? And most importantly, senior leadership as well. How do they view the product? And trying to piece all of that together. So having that view definitely helps in getting a better understanding of the product, and it puts you in a better position to make good choices. Now, with that, I'm going to use it as a segue to get started with today's session. What I'm going to do is first present my screen, and I'm going to take a quick feedback from you folks if my screen is visible. Should my screen be visible, then I'll kickstart the topic. Awesome. Is my screen visible? All right, I'm just going to wait for a few folks to say yes so that I have a little bit of confidence because I'm doing this on YouTube live for the first time, so I don't necessarily have clear feedback on whether it's visible, not visible. So yes, so I can't be doing this full screen because I'm for some reason not able to control the slides when it's not in when it's in full screen mode. So I will be having to do this with the screen visible. So let me know, however, if the content is visible as we go along. I've tried to make sure that the slides are not jam-packed, so it's going to be one bullet point per slide. So that way you can focus on the key point. There's going to be there for a lot of slides. So it shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, I will try to zoom in. One moment. I'm going to compress a couple of things. Is this any better? Achint, Akanksha, since you've requested me to zoom in, if you can just let me know if this is better. Awesome. Great. So today we're going to focus on how to deconstruct LinkedIn news feed. Don't worry, Murthy. I'm going to make sure that the only challenge, as I said, Achint, is while I do go to full screen, it becomes difficult for me to control it from my end. So in case you folks are doing this through mobile, it's going to be a tad bit difficult for you to probably see anything tiny. But I'm going to make sure that I do a lot of voiceover and explanation so that you're not going to feel that you're missing out on anything during the course of this session, right? But yes, hopefully you should be able to zoom in on your screens as well. And I'll be making this available on YouTube. So the minute the session ends, it most likely ends up being a video available. So you can always come back for future references. It shouldn't be a problem. But in case you find it difficult to access it or see it, just let me know, ping me, and I'll see if there's any hiccups at my end which is preventing you from accessing the video. But for all practical reasons, this will be on my channel as a public video. So it shouldn't be a challenge. Great. With that, let's get started. So the goal today is for us to be deconstructing LinkedIn newsfeed. Before we dive into what I approach doing a little bit of a deconstruct, I'm going to give you a little bit of background to why we do a deconstruct. That's probably the very first question, and probably answer a more important question. Who is a deconstruct intended for? A lot of folks have rightly mentioned the answer is for us. We do deconstructs to help us learn and appreciate a product. There could be secondary reasons. For example, you may do a deconstruct as part of, say, a cohort-based course, or you could do it as part of an interview. Like, that's a second order reason why you do it. The primary intent with I request people to do deconstructs actively as part of their skill building is for you to have a much better sense of understanding as to what makes good products, what makes bad products? What were the kind of choices that went into making these good products? And therefore, over a period of time, help you build your product sense. Now, to visually depict that, I'm going to show you a slide which helps in better appreciating this concept. Now, if you were to think about the concept of product sense, right, I will do a little bit of a quick recap. In some of my earlier sessions, I've talked about the difference between product thinking, product sense, and therefore product craftsmanship, right? And I'm probably going to therefore do a little bit of a quick recap on what each of these things mean as well. That way you'll be able to understand where I come in from and why I choose to do this particular activity, right? Now, if you were to think about the atomic unit of product thinking, which is the fundamental kernel of what goes into making good products, it's all the decisions and choices that we make. Now, to make a good decision or a choice, we rely upon information. And we get information from a wide range of sources, right? To build a product, it is necessary for us to understand about the user. It's necessary for us to have a good understanding about the market. Because we're building predominantly software products, it's important for us to understand the first principles about technology and design. And lastly, you are building a particular product within the context of an organization, which is your business. So it's also equally important for you to understand what is your business, why does it exist, how does it operate, and what its current state is. You factor all of these things in, collect that information, and with that, you make a set of choices, basic your aspirations as well as your constraints. And some of those choices, which you implement as a product, goes out into the market, and you collect the implications of that as an outcome. And you look back at it and say, hey, did the choice that we make have an impact on the consumer and on the business? You then go through the cycle repeatedly over and over again, and good teams get incredibly good at making high quality decisions, right? So therefore, as product managers, we try to get better with the quality of decision or choices that we make. Now, if we have to improve the quality of decision and choices, right, what then happens is your quality of outcomes also improve. And in order for you to do that, you are currently relying on external sources of information. So today, when you make decisions, you go out and do market research, you speak to your customers, you probably get your customer support team to pass you some information, you go through ratings and reviews. There's a whole lot of sources from which you get this information. Likewise, regarding the market, you probably depend on some kind of external agency to do your market research. You probably speak to some consultants to get some understanding of what the market looks like. So you collect all those pieces of information and then you make your decisions. Now, what happens over a period of time is when you start collecting this piece of information, you start being able to see patterns and you start internalizing some of those things, right? So good product sense is the ability to therefore build your own personal library of information to make high quality product decisions. So in your early parts of career, because you don't have that library or that repository, you depend upon external sources. But over a period of time, you start seeing patterns in terms of how consumers behave, how the market operates, how technology trends evolve, how businesses operate, and you're able to preemptively think about all the variables that come to play to make the choices, and you have a good if-then cause-effect understanding, which allows you to make decisions quicker and faster. And that is what I call as building product sense, product judgment, or product intuition. Building your own personal library of high quality information and outcomes, which allow you in any newer context to apply that library to make choices that result in quicker, faster, high quality decisions. So when external becomes internal is what I call as the moving from product thinking to product sense. Now, in order for you to improve your product sense and judgment and to do it consistently well, you start understanding how to deal with constraints better. Now, the hardest part about building products is understanding the market and dealing with constraints. Given infinite money, infinite manpower, infinite runway, almost anyone and everyone can make great products. But the reality is, every company is stuck with issues such as funding, money, teams, skills, alignment. Everyone has different point of views in the world. So dealing with all of those constraints in an effective way and finally going from discovery to definition to delivery is one of the key factors which helps in saying that you get good with building product sense, right? So as you go along your career, if you're able to identify patterns which help you to deal with better constraints, your product sense also improves. You also become really good when you're able to apply that product sense to deliver value consistently. So it's not enough that an individual delivers value once, but it's also being able to deliver value consistently. That's when we say that we have great product sense. Lastly, it's also about delivering value in the market in a timely fashion. One of the greatest leverages of having incredibly good product sense is the ability to cut short the time it takes to make high quality decisions. Now, for those of you who have already gone on to building products, you'll realize that all of the activities which involve collecting information take time. Speaking to customers take time. Doing data analysis takes time. Reaching out to your customer support and collecting information takes time. So what you realize is there is this system or condition where on one dimension it takes a lot of time to collect a lot of information, and the other side there is pressures from leadership, from the market to make decisions really quick. So which means you need to have a mechanism which allows you to make decisions really, really quick so that you're able to capture time to market really fast. Because what happens is customer behaviors for certain types of industries keep evolving super fast. So if, let's say, you slip by about a year or two, the customer behavior or trend has changed, and therefore even when you do come to market, somebody else has captured that preference from the market, and you end up having to put a lot more effort to earn the customer back into your business, or you probably lost that opportunity. So being able to make high quality decisions in really good time frames in order to deliver the product is supremely important. So that's where product sense acts as incredible leverage, and having therefore a very, very large repository of high quality decision making heuristics helps you to cut short the time it takes from having to do research, which is why if you look at a lot of senior leaders, right, they have what is called as intuition. It's not to say that all leaders have it, but some exceptionally very good leaders do not spend too much time having to do a ton of market research for years on together. They're able to collect a few signals, collect the dots, and make very high quality, high risk bets, which result in the company leapfrogging in their growth and beating out competition in a remarkable fashion, right? So having great product sense creates incredible leverage. The reason why I'm again giving this set of a context is for you to appreciate and understand how important it is to build your product sense and the kind of complexity and effort it will take. It's not that one fine day you wake up and your product sense is just downloaded into your brain. Unfortunately, matrix does not exist. It takes time and effort and requires for you to pay attention to all of these dimensions over a reasonable period of time so that you start building that repository. So to summarize, having great product sense is all about having your internal source of information to make high quality product decisions so that you're able to deliver value in a timely fashion despite organizational constraints and ambiguity about the users and markets. That puts you at an incredible, powerful position to capture value and deliver value to the market much better than anybody else. Which is why, like I said, if you look at one of Amazon's core leadership principles, it's about leaders being right a lot. They have very strong judgment and instinct. It's not that they woke up one fine day and had it. They built it over a period of time, right? And therefore, the last aspect of it is having product taste. Here, the distinction that I make when I talk about product taste is the ability to make high quality products. Now, the reason why I emphasize again on high quality products is high quality products have the inherent ability to sell itself. For example, why do we talk about Apple, right? It raises your status symbol in the market. It makes you look different, feel different, and therefore it has the power of word of mouth, which makes it incredibly powerful for you to acquire customers more efficiently than anybody else. So high quality has a lot of leverage to business, right? It allows you to lower your cost of operations many times if you find out the value chain really well. It allows for you to acquire customers more efficiently. It allows for you to retain customers more efficiently. So the ultimate pinnacle of product building is aiming to build these kind of high quality products. And that again comes from you having a very, very strong understanding of what makes for great taste, right? It goes from beyond being functional and valuable to being ultra delightful, wherein to a point where customers look at your product and it raises the emotional quotient to such a high level, they're actually going out and screaming from the top of the building saying, people, please buy this product, right? When you're able to think about experiences at that level where people don't think twice about how much money they spend, you've reached a whole new level. But to reach that, again, it starts by having very good product sense and then translating that to saying what makes for great taste. You start looking at the attributes and parameters of what makes for certain products like Apple to be delightful, what makes for certain products like, say, a Mercedes to be wow, aiming to raise the status of consumers, right? When you start seeing those patterns and you start incorporating them into your product, you end up building what I would call as highly tasteful products, which has incredible business leverage. Now comes the question of how do we build product sense. Just going to give you a quick primer on that. Like I said, in order for you to make good decisions, it boils down to the kind of user information that you collect, the market information that you collect, the kind of technology that evolves over a period of time, how design choices are being made, and the context of business. So the better you get at collecting input signals and its causality towards outcomes, and you start building that repository, over a period of time, you have what I call as that high quality heuristics library to make better product decisions and choices. Now, there are a variety of techniques that you can go out to use to build your product sense. So in this case, since you want to understand about users, your domain knowledge, technical knowledge, creative solutions, and execution, in another earlier session, I talked about all of these methodologies. Today's session is specifically to focus on deconstructing products because it's perhaps one of that singular activity which I see effectively touching all aspects of product building. It touches user behavior, it touches domain knowledge, it touches technical and design knowledge, it goes into the realm of how people come up with creative solutions. And therefore, you're able to see all of these pieces come together a lot more effectively in terms of what finally went into making a good quality product or a bad quality product, which has had an impact in your life or in society at large. That's one of the primary reasons why I'm a big fan of doing deconstructs. Now, what is product deconstruction? This was the second question that I asked you folks. The first part is understanding what a deconstruction is. It is to break something down into separate parts in order to understand, right? So here, what we want to understand is what went into making these timely product decisions, which resulted in value being delivered despite ambiguity and constraints. Now, one of the challenges when you do a deconstruction is because you're not part of an organization, you don't necessarily understand what the ambiguity could have been or what the constraints are. But at least you're able to look back and think what could have been the questions that one asked in order to result at the answers. So if you to look at a deconstruction, you have a product in your hand, you have the answer sheet technically, right? You see everything that has been coming out as a consequence of the choices that these teams made. What you're trying to do is reverse engineer and ask, what questions did the product manager ask? What question did the engineering leader ask? What question did the design leaders ask? And which amongst these questions, when asked, results in the answer that I see as the final product in front of me? That is probably the simplest abstraction of how I'd like to see a deconstruct. You're trying to reverse engineer the product by looking at the answer and see what kind of questions went into being asked to come up with that final product in your hands. There are a lot of other ways in which typically people look at deconstruct saying, hey, how can you improve the product? tell me two different suggestions. All this is nice, but it takes away focus from actually understanding. And one of the prime reasons I'm also doing these deconstruct sessions is to show you how deep one needs to go into doing a deconstruct when you think about deconstruction of practice. More often than not, I see a lot of over indexing happening on how to improve the product without having necessarily understood how to go, or how do the teams actually go about making certain choices. Have you really understood the nitty gritty of choices? Because the excitement is there to showcase solutions. Inherently, as human beings, we love to show our creativity. We don't like to dwell in the problem space because it's uncomfortable. Nobody likes to be sitting and looking at a problem. It makes us feel, it's difficult, right? Solutions, on the other hand, makes it seem like you found an answer. It gives you a dopamine hit when somebody says, "Oh wow, this looks like a magical solution." You're like very excited. So what I see is therefore a lot of folks queuing towards going towards, "Hey, here are 10 ways you can improve the product." But in order for you to even make that suggestion in the first place, how much time have you spent into actually understanding probably every single detail that has probably gone into making choices that result in the product, for you to appreciate and say, okay, this is why that choice is made, and is there any merit in the first place for me to make that suggestion? So you can only improve something that which you understand. You cannot improve something that you don't understand. Otherwise, what you're doing is coming up with a fictitious sense of what can be improved. It may sound great in theory, but it's not grounded in practicality or in reality. So one of the primary goals that I wish for you to take away from this session is do a deconstruct, one, first and foremost, for yourself. Second, for you to understand what really goes on into making a good product, and also therefore bad products. And therefore it requires for you to get into an inordinate amount of detail, and that's what we're going to start doing right now. Now, in the community that I am running on WhatsApp, I had shared this as an early ready reckoner, as probably sort of opening questions that you typically tend to ask when you're doing a product deconstruction. And if you notice, many of these questions are in essence the exact same questions that you would ask when you embark, when you start building a product. The first question that we always ask when we want to build a product is, well, who are you building this product for? The reason why, be it a B2C company or a B2B company, is you're trying to solve a user's problem. When you solve that problem in a way that delivers value, they're willing to give you some part of the money to you to say, hey, thank you for solving my problem, and here's the money for it, right? So it really then becomes important to understand who the user of this product is. And therefore, given this set of user or users, what is the jobs to be done for that user? Now, again, if you notice, this is the second question that we typically ask. What is the consumer, or who is the consumer? And given that consumer, what is the problem that they're facing? And if so, how do they go about solving that problem today? Right? So even in the absence of your product, the consumer is not sitting silent. They're finding some means to solve this problem. Either there's an existing product, it could be a digital product, it could be a physical product, or it could be a service. But there is some means to show that the problem is important enough for them to act upon it. If it is a problem important enough, but people are not acting upon it, well, it probably means there is no problem to be solved. There is, however, a certain class of products which don't fall into this definition, and those are typically what I call as gaming products or social media products, because these, no matter what you do or how you try to interpret, it really stems from a different lens of understanding consumer behavior. And it really doesn't come by digging into trying to understand problems, but you have to have a meta understanding of human behavior. People love entertainment, but beyond that, you have to be creative as to what could entertain people, right? Like, I don't think you can ever go and ask someone and ask, what could have been the sort of questions that you asked to come up with a game like Pac-Man? Or what kind of questions would you even ask to come up with a concept called as Angry Birds, right? So there are those class of products which have a very tangential way of identifying opportunities. Now, I'm going to keep that as probably a discussion for another day. But for the vast majority of products, more often than not, consumers have a predisposed inclination to solving problems which are important in life. It just so happens that the solutions or products are subpar. And therein, if you notice, is the natural order of the third question that you ask. In the absence of the product that we are trying to deconstruct today, there are solutions already available. Now, take for example, say Swiggy. It's a product that everybody uses to order from restaurants. Now, even before people started ordering in from restaurants using Swiggy, most restaurants anyway ordered some form of home delivery, except they had certain riders and caveats. People were already used to the idea of eating out because it gives them a bit of taste, variety, it takes you away from the mundane chore of having to cook. What Swiggy did was make it easier and cheaper to perform that task. And now today they're able to charge a little bit for the convenience that they provide to you. Take about any other case of consumer product, right? Let's take, say, Instagram, right? One may say that, hey, people did not do this before, but the prior behaviors back in the day, people used to take photographs, store it in photo albums, and then go around and show it to families. So if you recall, many years ago, we would have these massive albums, and whenever people used to come home and say, hey, come, look, I went to this particular country, here was the experience. So there were these intrinsic behaviors. Digital created a whole new way of making this explode and make this a lot more fun. And therefore, you can see patterns of this over a period of time. And that's the essential thesis of jobs to be done, right? Most consumers, for most problems, there are existing patterns. It just so happens that there are newer inefficiencies that come about, and technology comes in a very interesting way of solving for it, which makes the experience better, cheaper, or faster. This is always the three dimensions in which you can see products being 10x better. They're either better in terms of experience, or they're cheaper in terms of an experience, or they're faster in terms of experience, thereby creating value for consumers, right? Now, the next logical solution is, whenever you think of solving a problem as well, is you ask yourself that, well, if I have to make a mark for myself in the consumer's mind, there has to be something different. That's what gives you the edge. Otherwise, you have to spend a lot of money to either do marketing or give discounts to switch consumer preferences. But if you want to create some kind of an intrinsic advantage to capture the preference of the consumer from the market, you're going to look for some form of differentiation. It could be that it could be a positioning advantage. It could be that you are leveraging a new channel to reach out to your customers, or the product experience in itself could be different. Or it could be that you're able to find out newer ways of reducing the cost of the product, therefore making it cheaper. Or it could be that previously, the effort that you required to use to solve that problem used to be, let's say, n units, and now you're reducing it to a lot lesser. Or the time it takes to solve a problem is drastically compressed. Right? So you're looking for some dimensions of differentiality. It's not to say that every company should do it, but most companies, in order to gain some kind of an advantage to capture market share more efficiently, look for some dimensions of differentiation. As you can see, all of these questions that I'm asking here are by default the basic set of questions that we ask before we embark into building any kind of products. So feel free to take a snapshot of this. It's also going to be available on YouTube, so you can always come back and visit it. But this is going to be the opening premise with which I'm going to start today's deconstruct. So with that, now we're going to get into the meat of this problem statement, is how do we actually deconstruct a real product? Rather than going theoretically, I've always believed that to understand certain principles or nuances well, doing live exercises helps you to connect theory and practice a lot more effectively. So now is when I'm going to open up the floor also for asking questions, right? So what I'm going to do is almost every segment starts off with a question, and therefore I'm going to pose that question to you first. I'm going to open up the floor for getting answers for about 30 to 45 seconds. Use the chat to give your answers for it, and then I will present how I approach that as well. So that way, it's just not me giving a very one-sided dialogue. You also have some fun solving this problem alongside with me, and that way, maybe some parts of what I'm sharing gets to stick with you that you can reuse tomorrow while you actually do your product deconstruct. So usually, again, a good prerequisite before doing any kind of deconstruct is you should have spent some amount of considerable time using that product to be able to pay attention to the details. If you wake up one fine day and say, I'm going to do the deconstruct today, it's slightly difficult because you are not going to have the ability to observe all the intricacies of a product suddenly. So a good deconstruct also requires for you to set some time apart and say, you know what, I'm going to start doing this deconstruct, and therefore I'm going to give myself the time and space to observe this product casually over an interval of time. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be even a month. Uh, that allows for you to grasp various nuances, and then when you're ready to ask these questions, you're in a better position. If you try to rush this process through, you're going to do a very superficial task. You may get that satisfaction saying, I've done a check mark of a deconstruct, but you're not going to get into the nitty gritties. And ultimately, the reason why we're doing this is so that we learn. So, for the sake of good, deep learning, it becomes important for us to invest some prior time to have a reasonable observation window wherein we are able to observe casually many aspects and dimensions of this product before actively getting into the task of deconstruction. With that, I'm going to start with the very, very first question. For the LinkedIn NewsFeed, who is the user of this feature? So I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Feel free to use the chat to give in your answers. Who is the user of this feature? Any answers? Any thoughts? Who is the user of this feature? Active users of LinkedIn, all right? Viewers and writers, professionals who want to engage with other like-minded professionals, someone who is working as a professional, aspire to be one, professionals, mostly professionals, job seekers, students, sales execs, uh, LinkedIn users. Awesome. Interesting answers, right? Now, for those of you who said professionals, now LinkedIn by definition, if you look at it, is a professional networking website. So we need to ask ourselves, is there a slightly more nuanced answer that we can come up with? Okay, so we have job seekers, we have students, we have influencers, we have hiring managers, alrighty, literally everyone who sees it as a default. Yes, that's true, it is. But is there a way in which we can define a slightly more nuanced definition of these users so that it becomes easy for us to deconstruct this product? Someone says, okay, there are people who are looking for career transitions, networking, professionals who want to connect, learn from leaders, right? People who want to build a professional network. So all of these are good answers. I'll share with you how I think about approaching this problem statement now. Now, when I look at this, I try to break this up in a slightly different way, right? And I'm trying to reverse engineer it from the content and the interactive set of people who are participating in it, right? So first is obviously there are people who are consuming the feed, right? This is my first broadest abstraction of people who are actively using the newsfeed. Second is there are people who want to create content. There are people or businesses who want to create content, and then there are also groups that want to create content. So if you notice, I'm trying to segregate, saying that content is the foundation of this newsfeed, and therefore there are producers and consumers. And amongst producers, I'm trying to do one level of stratification to say, well, there are individuals who like to create content, there are businesses that like to create content, and there are groups that are trying to create content. The reason I'm trying to do this is I'm not trying to go into saying, well, there are IT professionals, etc., because these are all fragmentations of the same sort of users. But ultimately, you're either a consumer or a creator, either you're a business or a non-business entity, or you're a group or a non-group. So these are the broader set of abstractions. And the reason, again, for that is trying to understand what are the motives behind it. And a broad set of motives enough to find out why each of these groups actively do the task that they do, right? These individuals reside within the superset of LinkedIn's personas, engineers, designers, marketeers, etc. All of them are your superset personas. These are subset personas very, very specific to this particular product statement, right? Given this set of individuals or these actors for these products, The next question that I want to ask is, what are the jobs to be done for each of these users? So we saw that there were people who want to create content. There are people who want to consume content. There is obviously businesses who also want to create content. And then there are these social groups that are also trying to create content. For each of these individual personas, what are the jobs to be done? So maybe each of you can take a stab at one of these personas. One of you can say, okay, if I'm picking up content creators or users who are creating content, what could be their jobs to be done? If you're taking, let's say, a person who is consuming content, what could be their jobs to be done? If there's a business which is trying to create content, what could be their jobs to be done? And if there are groups which are trying to create content and consume content, what should be their jobs to be done? Cool. So Siddharth is saying, people want to network. Arpit is saying, for showcasing relevant content that they seek. All right. Professionals wanting to network. So I think the notion of networking is the primary reason why LinkedIn exists. So I think we need to go to one level deeper as to why NewsFeed as a product exists and what is the specific jobs to be done in that context. So network is ultimately the primary reason why this product exists. But this specific product, what is the nuanced jobs to be done which enables better networking? So if networking is the ultimate goal, let's assume that's one of the primary goals, what are jobs to be done in that particular direction? Or about that, is there anything else that LinkedIn stands for, which enables to understand why does this capability exist and what is it trying to achieve? So Ashwin says, businesses would like to improve their sales through engaging relevant content for target audiences. Okay, interesting. Companies would like to market themselves. Businesses would like to get more traction from their target audiences. Great. For creators, having the ability to engage with the audiences. Yes. Krishna Mohan says, for creators to be an influential voice to get more subscribers, views, also interesting. For individual creators to sell themselves, to share their ideas and knowledge. Interesting. Shashank says, for the feed consumers to know what happened since the last time they opened. All right, interesting. Praveen says, businesses can probably generate leads. Okay. For feed consumers, share their lifetime journey of for particular individuals. Okay, I don't think I understood that, but I'll probably come back to that. Then professionals looking at news feeds to get the latest updates from their networks, etc. Awesome. All interesting answers. Now I'll share how I have been trying to put a structure towards this. As a feed consumer, I would say as a user, I would like to consume and engage with content from people and businesses that I'm connected to, follow, or likely to get value so that I can become smarter, become more productive, as well as get new opportunities. Now, where are we deriving this set of jobs to be done? If you look at the LinkedIn's primary vision mission statement, their goal is to improve the economic outcome for the world. So they call themselves as an economic graph. And they say that as part of economic graph, there are certain guiding principles. You want to help people connect, you want to help people learn, and you want to give them opportunities. So therefore, as a feed consumer, I'm saying that I want to connect with people and businesses, the right kind of people, the right kind of businesses, and by following them, I get smarter because they share knowledge with me. I become productive professional because they're sharing know-hows about how to do businesses or how to do work, as well as I get to hear about job opportunities, which improves my economic outcome. So this is how a feed consumer finds value in coming to a news feed. Now, if you look at someone who's creating content, there could be a couple of jobs to be done. One, as a content creator, I would like to put my content in front of others so that I may establish myself as a subject matter expert. So a couple of you have identified that jobs to be done, right? I find I want to, so in today's world, we understand that everyone has a certain leverage in being visible in media, and therefore as getting themselves some kind of subject matter expertise tag attached to them. It creates leverage because it probably opens up new job opportunities. It probably makes it easier to get the foot into the door for certain conversation. It probably opens up new business opportunities. It probably allows you to attract talent. So there's a wide range of reasons why people want to establish themselves as subject matter experts, but they find that a platform such as this can be used to deliver value and establish their credentials as a subject matter expert, right? Now, there are also folks who don't necessarily want to establish themselves as subject matter experts, but would like to share updates from their professional life so that people in their network get to know about their accomplishments and sense of progress they're making professional. Now, Achin, don't worry. I'm going to make sure that I read it out for you. Unfortunately, I can't move the window position, but I will read it out to you so that you don't miss out on the content that is there, right? Now, why do people have such a need to share updates? Now, if you look at us, intrinsically as human beings, we like to tell our friends and families about the progress that we made in life. It gives us a sense of achievement. It gives us a sense of progress. It gives us a sense of status. And it is a fundamental human need. In the absence of LinkedIn, you would probably meet someone in a social circumstance, say, hey, you know what? I recently got promoted from being an associate PM to being a product manager. Or you say, hey, guys, you know what? That long dream job that I've been finally waiting for, I finally got into Google. Or, you know, I've been waiting to get into Razorpay and I finally gotten into Razorpay, right? We love to share these accomplishments and get these kind of feedback because it makes us feel good. Intrinsically, human beings love to get social validation. And therefore, given that we understand such a need, a newsfeed kind of gives you a broader canvas, a larger reach, if I may put it, to allow you to showcase your accomplishments to people that matter in your network. We also know that as professionals, we like to seek help. Many times at work, we don't necessarily know how to solve certain problems. Therefore, we want to get guidance or very tactical solutions for some point in time problems. And therefore, a platform such as this could potentially help. And how do we know that? We see the kind of questions that people are asking on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm stuck in this problem. Could you help me? Uh, Here's how I'm facing this problem. Could people in my network share some approaches towards it? Or I'm struggling with hiring and maybe can you share on a few leads? So we can see that by looking at the nature of content that people are putting out there, there are various jobs to be done. So again, as you can notice, I'm not trying to imagine these jobs to be done. I'm trying to reverse engineer the jobs to be done by deeply analyzing all the various types of content and therefore trying to get a sense of, this is probably why, or this is what the jobs to be done could have been envisioned as by the PMs or the product team there, which results in the nature of these content being showcased to me, right? Likewise, if you look at brands creating content, a brand could have a variety of reasons why they want to put it out there. They want to probably build awareness, they probably want to build engagement, or they probably want to build recall value, right? Likewise, a content which is being created in a group, it could be that people want to make the content members engage a lot more actively. They want them to participate, they want them to share knowledge, etc. So content members also want to find out another way by which they can put the activities happening within the community outside of it, so that they could attract probably new people to the community if it's an open community, or acts as another surfacing mechanism for people who are probably not actively checking into the community to get an idea of, hey, this is what's happening in my community. Maybe I should double click in, go inside my community and participate because this seems like an interesting piece of conversation that I'd like to be a part of, right? Now, these are all the visible set of actors for whom there are certain jobs to be done. But there is also LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is also a key stakeholder, and therefore the question comes, what are their set of goals? So if you notice in our early slide, while there is that entire sense around what a user's problems are, there are two other buckets, which is the business side of things and the technology and design side of things. In business, probably one of the first questions that we ask is, well, what's in it for the business or associated stakeholders, and why do they choose to do what they choose to do? What value do they get? So if a product is supposed to deliver value, it is also supposed to capture value. And therefore, from that sense, LinkedIn as a business has a set of jobs to be done, right? As a platform, therefore, LinkedIn wants probably suggest people they may know who they should follow and engage with so that they can become more productive and successful. So if you look at LinkedIn's primary goal, It's to help people connect so that knowledge transfers happen, opportunity transfer happens, and therefore there is merit in finding out newer surface points to connect individuals. So the feed acts as one such mechanism through which connections happen, right? LinkedIn also has certain business goals. Uh, as you engage with the product, LinkedIn understands your needs and desires, and therefore is finding out ways in which it can cross-sell, upsell new features that helps you being productive and successful, and in that process, monetize you as well. Now, LinkedIn probably also has realized that, hey, because there's a lot of engagement going on, I also want to figure out ways in which I can suggest advertisements to users scrolling through news feeds, which can be of value to my brands and businesses engaging on my platform and finding out new channels which they can reach out to customers. And by being that intermediary which facilitates this value creation, I can capture a part of it back. So these are some of the jobs to be done with which LinkedIn is thinking about solving problems. So now, if you're looking at it, you have all of these stakeholders, each of them having a wide range of jobs to be done. And we're trying to figure out the best way in which we can bring all of these jobs to be done as a coherent, magical, simple, usable product that delivers value by fulfilling all of these conditions. So if you notice, it's actually a very complex problem statement. It's not a single problem with a single stakeholder. You have multiple stakeholders, multiple jobs to be done, each of them which probably have conflicting goals. Some of them may have connected goals. And we're trying to go through that intertangled set of choices, which allows us to make a good product choice, which results in the product that we finally see. Now, we saw that there were a set of questions that we asked saying that, okay, who's the user? We understood what are the jobs to be done. And now the third question is, in order for us to appreciate a particular product or a particular behavior, we need to understand that, hey, in the absence of this product, how have all of these actors, excluding LinkedIn, because LinkedIn has a business goal attached to it, but the person who's trying to consume content, which are all of your professionals, you have people who are professionals who want to create content, and there are brands that want to create content, and then there are businesses that want to create content, and there are groups that want to create content and consume content. Each of these actors had a certain set of products which help them to perform these jobs, right? And if we don't understand what these products are, it becomes very difficult for us to understand why LinkedIn can or could be a better product, right? Now, before I go on to showing the answer, sorry if you had a quick sneak peek at that slide, I want you to tell me for each of these actors, what are possibly existing products or services that go about achieving these jobs to be done. So I'm going to go back to the previous slide. I'm going to show that. Now look at this slide and then tell me, for the feed consumer, what are other products which are available? It could be online, it could be offline, it really doesn't matter. But we know that these are existing products or services that help fulfill these jobs to be done. So each of you can pick one that you think you have an answer to. So one of you can pick a feed consumer, one of you can pick the person creating content, one of you can pick the business group, one of you can create pickup groups, and give me a set of possible products or services which help them achieve these same sort of jobs to be done. Cool. So I see news, articles, mags. Kanishk, if you can probably just let me know which individual or which actor are you targeting at with that solution space. So yes, Avik is saying for a feed consumer, I could read company blogs, I could read newsletters, I can go to Twitter. Saran says for consumers, I can look at Google News, I can look at WhatsApp, Telegram communities, YouTube. Feed consumers say, Ibad says blog pages, social media groups, Reddit, Medium, podcasts, YouTube. Businesses can go to news platforms. Fantastic. These are a good set of substitute products. So now let me actually go to the solution spaces that at least I identified. It's not to say that what I've written down is exhaustive, but this is exactly the activity that you need to do for all of these consumers. So if you look at the person who's consuming the feed for the purpose of knowledge, they can go to blogs, they can go to books, they can go to Twitter, they can go to YouTube, they can go to TikTok, and they can probably even go to WhatsApp. Now, for someone who's looking for job opportunities, they can go to job sites. So if you notice, you have a wide range of products for each of these jobs to be done for each of these specific actors. Likewise, if I'm a professional who is interested in creating content to establish my subject matter expertise or authority, I can write my own blog, I can write a book, I can create a Twitter account and tweet, I can create a Substack account and create newsletters, I can create a Medium account and create articles. I can go to YouTube, like what I'm doing right now, and create videos and put it out there. So you have all of these potential solutions that are easily available as someone who wants to create professional content and put it out there. Likewise, for businesses that want to tell their business stories, there are trade magazines, they have their own internal and external blogs. They also can go to Twitter. Some of them also present on YouTube to tell their stories. For communities, you have different set of products. You have forums, you have WhatsApp, you have Discord, you have Slack. Now this becomes very interesting because the problem that you're solving has already been solved by each of these folks. Now, LinkedIn Newsfeed therefore has to do something better than all of these folks, and it should have some advantage for it to be able to build the kind of critical mass to have the kind of engagement quality that it is having right now. In fact, most of you who are here on today's YouTube live, for all practical reasons, have come in because of LinkedIn Newsfeed, right? The audience that I'm able to communicate to on most days is because of LinkedIn Newsfeed. So there's definitely some intrinsic reason why LinkedIn Newsfeed is a superior product despite having all of these products. And that's exactly what we want to first reverse engineer and try to understand. What could be the reason why LinkedIn is a superior product as opposed to a blog, as opposed to a Substack, as opposed to Medium, as opposed to a YouTube, for achieving the kind of goals that is being trying to be achieved? Because if you think about it, TikTok is a giant, YouTube is a giant, Twitter is a giant. Going against these giants is not an easy task, right? It just makes your competition like 10x faster, meaner, stronger, right? They have deep pockets, they have network effects, they have everything going in their favor. So if you think about it, why does then LinkedIn Newsfeed thrive? There has to be some reason, and that's what we want to decipher or understand. So now I'm going to pose that question to you. Why is LinkedIn Newsfeed better than these products in some aspects, which allows for audiences to be deeply engaged and entrenched? What gives its competitive advantage over, say, a YouTube or a Twitter, over a book, over a Substack, or blogs, or say even a Medium article? Okay, so I'm seeing some interesting answers coming in. Kanish says LinkedIn provides convenience to switch between such personas. Malabar says this could be subjective answer as to why. Yes, the entire product building process is subjective. So I'd love to hear your subjective reasons. Ibad says some posts reach higher engagement and reactions. Okay, Siddharth says better discovery. Trust factor of the platform. Kanish says access to reach. So now, for a moment, try to question your own answers. If reach was the problem, or it's better, LinkedIn definitely has a tinier audience base compared to YouTube. YouTube, for all practical reasons, should be, hitting the ball out of the park. Why then not, right? Likewise, if it's trust, all these platforms have built incredible amount of trust as well. People trust YouTube, like to a point where if an influencer says anything, people just buy that story, right? So why? What's the secret sauce that's going on here? Okay, Arpit says LinkedIn is perceived as a professional networking and act as the launchpad for network and reach. All right. Vignesh says, how does this exercise understand other products and markets for niche domains like clean tech, climate tech? Vignesh, I'll answer this question towards the end. Just make sure that you bring this up again. Anirudh says, core value proposition relevance to professional world. Okay. I want to see if we can get into a little more nuances. Like, these answers are good, but I want to see if we can get into a little bit more of detail here as to what creates that advantage. Yes, it's obvious that LinkedIn is a professional platform. No doubts about it. But what about that probably creates the advantage? Okay, for YouTube, creator needs a huge reach to get noticed. On LinkedIn, having a few connections is enough, right? LinkedIn provides more storytelling opportunities. That's true for other platforms as well. Vertically integrated, medium relevant content consumption. Okay. Aryan says network effects. Okay, interesting answers. Maybe if someone could double click on what network effects means here. Vaibhav says that the time that people spend on most of their time, their daily life, is something that is reflective and relevant. True, that's one of the inherent advantages of LinkedIn. But what are the properties of LinkedIn or attributes of LinkedIn which give it that kind of an advantage? Cool. I'm seeing some interesting answers, but I'm going to show how I think about it and where I choose to specifically double click. Now, in order for me to do this activity, I think the first activity I would like to do is just try to look at the various products, features, capabilities that come together and make the newsfeed happen. And that's how I'm trying to get a sense on the value of newsfeed and where the differentiation starts coming across and where this differentiation becomes really, really strong, right? So if you look at the newsfeed or the product that make it happen, right? If you see, there is the concept of a user profile picture, and there's a lot of emphasis placed on who that individual is in terms of social, professional credibility. You see a standard news feed like structure where there's content and there's text. You see that there is capabilities which allow you to create various types of media properties or content properties. So you can put images, you can create events, you can write articles. It also allows you to create videos. There is the ability for certain types of jobs to be showcased in a slightly different format as opposed to being a standard post. You can also see groups being promoted in very interesting ways. What you can also see is, in order for this product feature for newsfeed to work, there are adjacent products or features that come about making that happen, right? The first and foremost, probably the most important of the lot, is your LinkedIn profile page. And if you look at it, it has a lot of details about who you are as an individual, right? Who you are, what have you been doing over a period of time, which helps me as a platform to get a lot of intelligence about a user, right? For example, if you look at Deepak, that's me. You can get to see Deepak has been working in product for some time. He's been working on various kinds of products. You can see the kind of products that he's been building. You can see the kind of startups that he's been building. So what you have are a set of adjacent products which help in making LinkedIn newsfeed as a product 10x better. And that's, in essence, what kind of gives you the advantage. So that's where I'm going to go one level deeper to show how that differentiation comes about. If you were to create a kind of a tabular structure to compare each of these product features and see how it differentiates itself across all of these dimensions with other competing products. Now, this is not to say this is an expansive study, but it is to give you a flavor of what such a study could look like. If you compare LinkedIn with Twitter, now one of you mentioned that, hey, Twitter is kind of overlapping with LinkedIn, but one of the fundamental differentiating factors between a Twitter and a LinkedIn is the amount of depth of detail that comes into your professional profile as opposed to Twitter. Twitter gives you the ability to create a very short write up which says, this is Deepak, this is what I do, and it's probably restricted to 143 characters. Whereas LinkedIn allows for you to create an incredibly detailed profile that helps LinkedIn understand who you are as an individual. Now, why does that matter? If you think about your news feed, it is trying to connect individuals as well as recommend content to the right kind of individuals. Therefore, the foundation of that becomes, do I know enough about you as an individual? So the profile then becomes one of the foundational capabilities. While it is not a direct part of newsfeed, it is an adjacent product built by LinkedIn, which builds the primary power or capability to give intelligence to make newsfeed as a property work really, really well. And the reason why that profile works really, really well as well is the amount of detailing it gets to. Which college did you go to? Which school did you go to? What kind of accomplishments do you have? What have people given as ratings and reviews about? So if you notice in your profile section, there are recommendations that are given. You have a place to showcase the kind of accreditations that you've earned or the certificates that you've got. You can write in great detail what companies you work for, what problems you solved inside those companies, what kind of impact you created. No other platform has such a rich repository of information about your professional self. That in itself is an inordinate amount of differentiating factor. If you think about this as a system that connects to individuals, the more you know about an individual, the greater ability you have to connect to individuals. If I just see Deepak as a product person, XYZ person is also a product person, well, there are a wide kind of product managers. There are people working in enterprise companies, there are people working in startup, people working in consumer tech, people working in clean tech. There's a lot of nuances which would make it more relevant for me to probably connect with someone from the consumer tech as opposed to someone from clean tech. No doubts I'll have some value at some point to connect with someone from clean tech, but I would prioritize connecting to someone who is immediately a lot more similar. And if you look at it, LinkedIn has been able to collect this data over a period of time. So if Twitter were to do this, that's a lot of effort today to collect that piece of information. That is in itself a proprietary mode. If a blog were to do this, that's going to take a lot of effort and reasoning for people to do it. If you have to ask YouTube to do it, that's a lot of effort you're asking people to do it. Why was LinkedIn able to pull it off? Because they said, well, it is initially a job search platform. So they lured you with the promise of giving a job, and they still do, right? But in that process, they built the richest resume, and that now acts as an asset or a moat, which gives the greatest amount of information class, which allows you to reuse that information to making information connection happen a lot more seamlessly. So that is probably the nuanced answer that I'm probably seeking for when I try to understand what creates that depth of differentiation. Sure, the principle is network effects, but what you want to understand is why does that network effect exist? What is the underlying reason behind it? Sure, there are professional companies, but what about these aspects of professionals and information make the concept of a news feed become 10x more efficient? Now, that's where the real value comes in as well. The derivative of that is therefore your professional network. Because you have professionals who have detailed profiles, you're able to connect them a lot more efficiently as well. The second reason is the way in which these networks are also formed is very, very different. Now, if you look at Twitter, the way you follow someone is because you get to know of them, either because they're a celebrity or there's some happenstance or their content is the prime reason why you connect. Likewise, if you to see how I, identify a blog, it's largely through SEO, but you don't necessarily form a network there. So over, say, a product such as, say, a blog or, say, a media property, they don't have networks. And versus that which have networks, most of your platforms are interest-based networks, which means you find out people of similar taste, wherein LinkedIn is leveraging your existing professional network. That is, I am connected to people who are within my company. That's probably the first set of network of people that you form, right? I work in a company, I'm going to send out invites to all the people who work with my company. If I went to a particular college, I'm going to invite the people that I know through that college. And that forms a very different kind of network graphs. So for those of you who are interested in understanding social products, one of the key aspects that you should start doing is studying the concept of graphs and graph theory. And while all graphs may look superficially the same, how a graph forms largely influences the nature of connections and the kind of information flow that happens. So network effects is like a very superficial theory to say that, well, if you have network effects, it creates moat. But good product managers go one level deeper, two levels deeper, three levels deeper, try to understand what is the nature of network graphs here. How did this network form? What was the foundational thesis behind it? What were the initial connections forged? How do those connections form, make a difference? And therefore, if you look at, say, a product such as Facebook, it was based on social communities, which was your colleges. Then it expanded to friends. Whereas LinkedIn started with professional communities, people who went to the same colleges, but in the professional context, people who went to the same companies. Whereas YouTube started by creating content first as a thesis, saying that content is what's going to attract people, and I'm not looking for any other form of relationships. While they are a graph, the nature of the graph is very different. And that nuance helps you to understand why this professional network has certain types of advantages, which is better. So it's not good enough to identify that there is a network effect. It's not good enough to identify that people are connected. It's to understand what creates this graph very, very differently from other types of social graphs or other types of content graphs. And how does that create proprietary advantage, which makes it very difficult. Twitter today cannot, no matter what they do, they cannot replicate this effect. They cannot change their narrative in terms of how people connect. Likewise, an Instagram cannot reposition itself and start going in this direction. Therefore, the same reality holds true for LinkedIn as well. They cannot reimagine themselves to be, let's say, a travel platform or anything else because of the way in which these relationships, networks were forged. And understanding that gives you a great understanding in terms of how these products come to life in the first place. Uh, then there are certain non-intrinsic parameters which are probably true for all products, and these are features that can be easily copied. For example, almost all social products have very similar text editor boxes or feed boxes. They almost have the same layout for videos, images, but there are certain features of content formats which are probably slightly more applicable to LinkedIn. For example, you have job. There are specific UX layouts and treatments given for jobs. There are probably specific treatments given for videos or for articles, which require a little more depth, which you don't see in, say, a platform such as Twitter or LinkedIn. Or the fact that you have all of these capabilities coming together in a slightly more same way. It is not to say becomes the greatest competitive advantage, but over a period of these features help in adding value to the kind of interactivity that is happening. But the greatest power, if you were to look at it, comes in from your profile and the nature of underlying social graph or economic graph that is being forged by how these graphs were formed in the first place. And that's what helps you to understand why this graph works 10x more efficiently. Now, a small corollary that I'm taking out of this is more often than not, whenever people try to understand social products, they say, well, it's a video sharing platform, and you just get caught in that abstraction of video. Or you look at it as social, and therefore it's just all social graphs are exactly the same. It really requires for one to go 2 to 3 levels deeper again to understand how these graphs are formed, how these connections happen, how are the relationships being created. And this is not a software problem. This is a human problem. You're trying to understand the human behavior that creates these kind of connections and how these connections are appreciated. That is the true first principles of social products. And if you don't understand that, no matter what kind of software you get, you really can't create that kind of cohesion necessary to create a product like LinkedIn, NewsFeed specifically, right? Now that you understand how this product came about, so you know who the user was, what are the jobs to be done, what makes it different, and how it stands out. Now we want to get into the nitty gritties of the actual product building. How does LinkedIn Newsfeed actually work? What were the decisions that the product team took to make it happen? So I'm going to start off with a set of premises and start with the easy parts, and then I'm going to open up a few questions along the way. So the very first thing that I typically try to do whenever I attack any deconstruction product is try to identify what is the atomic unit of the product. Now, it gives you an easy way to peel the layers of the onion and try to see how everything else is connected to that atomic unit, right? Now, the simplest definition that I try to give about an atomic unit of a product is the fundamental building block of your product. For example, for Twitter, it is a tweet. For Uber, it's a ride. For Spotify, it's a song. Therefore, now that you've seen such examples, what is the atomic unit of a LinkedIn newsfeed? If tweet is the atomic unit of Twitter and a song is the atomic unit of Spotify, what is the atomic unit of LinkedIn newsfeed? Alrighty, I see that most people have got the right answer. Well, it is right. It is a post. So the reason why there are different types of posts. So sure, there are job posts, etc. And the collection of all of these posts put together create your news feed. So for those of you who answered the feed, The answer is partially right, but that is the finite product or the fundamental product that you're building, but it's constituted of a very, very simple unit which builds everything else around it. And identifying that is what allows us to reverse engineer and ask a set of questions as to saying, if this post was to be created and it has to be assembled to create finally what we call as a newsfeed, how does that happen, right? Or what are the thought processes that go on behind it? Now, to answer that question, like I said, the very first question that I choose to do is then ask, okay, what are the various types of posts? So we see that there are text posts, there are job posts, there are job update posts, there are video posts, there are posts with links, there are ad posts, and there are posts from groups, there are posts from business. There's a wide variety of posts that are being created. Again, I'm not trying for any reason trying to jump into asking questions yet. As you can see, I'm still in what I would call as the observation phase. I'm trying to get a sense of, well, even if I was to understand and reverse engineer this entire system, I should be first aware of everything that is going on. And if I've identified that the post is the atomic unit, well, at least I need to understand, okay, is there anything more to it? Is there anything less to it? What else should I pay attention to? So the first activity, therefore, I do after identifying that atomic unit as a post, you say, okay, what are the various types of posts that I see on my newsfeed? So this happens by me scrolling through it saying, well, that's a text post. Great. Okay, that's a type of post. Well, there are job posts coming in. Okay, that's a type of post. There are people posting updates about the jobs that they're getting. Okay, that's a different type of post. And they're all somehow magically coming together in my newsfeed, right? And therein is where my first question comes. Now I'm trying to understand, what is this magic that is going on? There are different types of posts on one side, and I know that different individuals, entities are creating these posts, job posts, content posts, career progression posts, achievement posts, ad posts. All of these are being created. And then suddenly, by magic, on the other end, it becomes this very well-organized linear structure where I see one post after the other. That's a question I'm going to ask myself. What's happening? How did this happen? If this is the atomic unit, some black magic is going on in the center, which is then converting this into this final newsfeed. So that's the very first question I'm trying to be curious about and trying to find the answer to. Therein comes the question to you folks now. How should we go about attacking this? There is on one side a bunch of posts being created. And then on the other side, there is magically this linear feed being created. I'm not looking at what is going on, but rather the question to you is, how do I attack this problem statement? What should be my next logical step? How do I frame this problem statement in such a way that I can start understanding the steps that go between the left side to the right side? So I'm not looking for the solution. So all of you are giving solutions: personalization, empowered personalization, cues, relevance. What we're trying to ask is the question that leads me to getting properly personalization is one of the answers. And therefore, I'm trying to put a structure to this. How can I systematically put a structure to this process which converts a set of posts into the final outcome, which is a newsfeed? So Ramya is saying, since atomic unit is the post and target is the profile, we have to look at what connects these two entities. Okay, interesting. How do we create a structured way of viewing this problem statement? Again, all of us are jumping into trying to find solutions or questions to the solutions as opposed to first even putting a good structure so that we may ask the right questions. What is the right way of structuring this problem? Cool. I'll jump into the answer so that it helps you build a perspective of how I try to attack these problems. It's not to say these questions that you're asking is wrong. These are good questions to ask. but I'm trying to find a methodical way of asking these questions so that my questions could be a lot more comprehensive, breadth-wise and depth-wise. What we're doing right now is what I'd call as open-ended questioning. The first set of questions that come to my head is what I'm asking out there. The problem with such an approach is you're not going to be exhaustive in your thinking process. So you need a mechanism or a system which allows you to be very, very comprehensive and thorough in all the kinds of questions that you ask so that you don't get lopsided into that which seems the most obvious. Now, anytime we see a problem statement such as this, because we have read a lot of literature, by default, our thinking is going to go towards, well, this is a personalization problem. There's post, there is sorting, therefore it's personalization. Therefore, okay, how should you personalize it? What is the sequence? What should I know about the user? All these are not necessarily the wrong answers or the wrong questions. These are good questions, but we are jumping the gun. What we're trying to do, or what I'm imploring you to do, is putting a structure so that you're able to identify all the dimensions through which you can ask questions. These are also important questions, but you're getting biased or indexed towards a particular track, and that is missing out the complete picture. So we're trying to put a framework or a methodology which helps us to see the big picture very, very clearly. Cool. Now let me go into how I approach this. One framework that I use towards understanding any kind of product is trying to apply systems thinking towards that problem statement, right? Now, let me try to help you understand what is systems thinking first and foremost. To understand systems thinking, first you need to understand what is a system. For a moment, take a pause from writing all the answers in the chat box. Pay attention because this is a very critical part of trying to deconstruct products, and not just deconstructing product. This is actually an important framework that you actually use when you build products in itself as well. Thinking of a product as a system, and therefore, how does this system function and operate? So to answer that question, first we need to understand what is a system. A system is a set of things interacting with each other towards a purpose or function that produces something greater than the sum of its parts. Now, to give you an example of systems that we can relate with, the human body is a system. It is a component of many systems coming together to create the wonderful person that you are. You have the visual system, your eyes. You have a system that allows you to breathe. You have the digestive system, which allows you to intake food, chew food, take it down, digest it, and put it out. You have the circulatory system, which is responsible for taking in blood, mixing in oxygen, distributing the oxygen towards various parts. And each of these systems unit is constituting of subsystems. Take the circulatory system, for example, right? It has the heart, it has the arteries, it has the veins, it has the RBC, it has the WBC, for those of you who are familiar with biology. Going out of a slightly biological example, let's look at financial systems, right? You have banks, you have a central bank, you have money. All of these are various subsystems that come together to create the financial system of a country, right? And each of these have a preordained or predefined set of functions. And when those functions are fulfilled well, the collective impact of all of these sub-functions or subsystems create a greater outcome for that larger system or purpose that exists. It is in that context that we're trying to bring and look at this NewsFeed as a problem statement. Say, well, in order for NewsFeed as a system to exist, what are its subsystems? So now the way, again, I said, right, we know there is an input process, the process of posts coming into existence. And then there is that final output process, which we see. So this is the only things that we can see today, right? And then there is this in between, which we don't know. But it doesn't mean there is no activity happening here, or there's no activity happening here. So if I was to go one level deeper, if you think about it, the system's view of a newsfeed is there is a subsystem that manages the creation, updation, deletion of content made by different types of users. Then there is a subsystem that magically takes all of this content created by different content creators and figures out which content should be shown to whom and also in what order. And then there is a subsystem that displays the content in a particular fashion for each user. So if you notice now, most of you got biased into thinking that personalization is the only answer to this. But if you realize, if you take a step back, newsfeed is not happening just by in itself. There's actually a complex set of subsystems that are actually coming together to view the final outcome that we see. And that's why it's important to build what I call as a systems view. It is so that you don't look at the function or a part of the problem statement in isolation, but to take a step back and look at the larger ecosystem and see what makes all of this happen. What you see as the newsfeed is only the outcome, but there are a lot of other systems that are working together to create that. So if you're just analyzing the output system, you're missing out on the bigger picture of what makes a newsfeed. But when you take a systems view and ask the question, well, if there's an output, there must be an input, and the input is being processed to create this output. So at the very base level, there's some input system, there's some processing system, and there's an output system. The subsystem which manages the creation is a part of the puzzle. The system that manages personalization is another part of the problem. The system that governs what should be displayed, how it should be displayed, etc., is the third part of the puzzle. Attacking all of this is what helps you to understand and appreciate how LinkedIn newsfeed actually works. Otherwise, all of us, if you notice, have been just biased into thinking personalization is the only part of the problem statement, which is not true. Now, to make this a little more, diagrammatic and making it easy to visualize, right? What you're seeing is you have various actors, right? You have people who are creating posts. There are various people who are creating job posts. There are various people who are creating posts with link. There are various people who are creating job update posts. There are various people who are creating ad posts. There are various people who are creating video posts. And there are various people creating group posts, right? Then there is that entire newsfeed personalization that all of you have rightly identified. But as you've seen, it is just a part of the system or a subsystem. It is not the entirety of the system, right? And then there's that experience. How do we see what happens? Who sees it? What's the visual display system looking like, etc. Each of these systems have a set of choices that have been made to result in it functioning the way it works, right? And that's what we now want to reverse engineer and understand. What kind of questions that each of these people ask, and what kind of choices could they have taken to give the output that we see today. Now, we're going to start with a set of simple set of questions. So what I want you to do in the chat now is, let's start with maybe post creation. Maybe spend about 10 seconds quickly giving me what kind of questions you think the product manager asked, who was responsible for building the feature set for post creation. What kind of questions do you think they asked? We're only talking about post creation. The purpose of post creation is to create, text post, image post, job posts, posts with link, ad posts, video posts. So yes, how to make it easy for post creation. Yes, that's the primary principle, right? But what else beyond that? Ease of creating posts is a guiding principle. I'm trying to get into a little more specifics in terms of, if you were to see a post creation tool and it is going to be made up of a sum of features, what will those features be and what questions resulted in those features coming into life? Okay, I see one interesting answer from Nikhil saying, okay, type of content. So users get to choose between text, image, URL type. What should be the limit of the size of post? Great point. How many posts can an individual post at a given point of time? Good question. The text box, which allows for a maximum characters allowed. Good question, right? Can the post be edited, formatted, post length? Now that's where we're now getting into nitty-gritty. These are good questions, right? Because we're asking about what goes into the thinking process for creation, read, update, delete of posts. Right? Now, let's go to the last part of it. We'll come to personalization in a bit because that's what you're most eager about, but I'm going to hold that back just for a moment. In terms of the newsfeed experience, in terms of the posts that you see in your newsfeed, what kind of questions do you think went on there? We just probably take 2-3 questions, and then we'll dive a little deeper to see what kind of questions I tend to ask here. It's not to say that my questions are also exhaustive, but it's just to give a flavor of thinking that goes behind the scene. Okay, visibility of posts. We're moving on to the next segment or subsystem, which is your newsfeed experience, which is how is it visually represented to the user? What kind of questions do you think we would be asking there? Should we make AI to make the user post better like spell check? So sure, there's a good question to ask as part of the post creation. I'm asking more about the newsfeed. So maybe let me do a thing. Let me open up this question set once again as I go to the next segment. That is going to be a little more fun. I have a visual representation which will make it easy for you to derive your questions from. So, as an opening set of questions that I like, not to say this is exhaustive, but just to give you a flavor, we will pick one or two of this and go many, many levels deeper, right? So, as part of post creation, as many of you have rightly identified, how do we create various types of posts? What are the components of the post? What should be the UX for post creation? This is some sort of opening questions, right? Likewise, an opening set of questions for newsfeed personalization is who is the user, what are their profile signals, what are the broad type of contents, what type of contents do they engage with, etc. Uh, this is just to give you a flavor of how you start, but this is not to say this is the expanse. The next slide that we go into is going to show you the kind of detailing that I would like for folks to get into. Right? So for that purpose, I'm going to show you an image. Right? Now, this image that you see is a post, and this is the post that the consumer sees. So now imagine that you are the PM who is responsible for how this particular post should be visible to the end user of the feed so that the post is exciting for them, so that you want to make them engaging. What kind of questions do you think went behind creating this particular content piece? Right? There are a lot of components here. What kind of questions were asked in order to finally result in this post that you see here? We're not talking about how this was shown to me. That's not the question I'm asking. What is being shown to me has a lot of thought gone behind it. What were the questions that were asked in order to finally determine what is being shown to me here? That's the question. Not how did it come to me, but what is being shown to me, what kind of questions were being asked, so that you see the final feature that you see here. Great. So Avik is saying, what social signals should we show to the end user? How many characters should be visible explicitly? What kind of metadata around a post is useful to decide? That will go into your personalization. What profile fields are required to build credibility? Great. How to make the user click see more and keep the users engaged? Good question. Do likes, comments, reposts play a factor in engagement? Okay. What is the most important thing for a poster in the feed? DPs, small summary post, or post when posted? Good question, right? Profile of post creator. Good question. Who is this post by? Fab. Now this is what I call as getting into the nitty gritties and details. And here I'm going to show you just a sort of opening questions that I saw the minute I saw this particular piece of content. Say, okay, what kind of questions can I ask? So scanning left to right, top to bottom, the first question I ask myself is, okay, what should be the information shown to establish the identity of this user and the relationship with the user? If I'm going to consume a piece of information, is there merit in me showing who is posting, or is the content more important, or is there a mixture of content and the user? If it is to be shown, Does a name surface or does a profile photo surface? If it is just a name, should I show the user, hey, what is the person's latest credentials? Where is this person working? What are they up to? Or does the absence of this make a difference? If the content is to be shown, as some of you have rightly said, what should be the character limit? What is the right amount of content to be shown so that it is exciting enough for the person to engage with it? How do I balance this out when there's a lot of content? And therefore, how does that interplay affect my character limit? How does this get affected on different display sizes? For example, if this will be shown on desktop, how does that make an impact? If this was to be shown on mobile devices, how does it make an impact? Likewise, you see a wide range of interactions. Like, what is the sequence in which this content should be shown? Should I show the like, the insight, and the heart button, or should it be inverted? Should I show count? Should I not show count? How many comments? How many reposts? What sequence should it be shown in? Should it be to the left? Should it be right? Which amounts this? So if you see, all of these are nitty gritties. But for those of you who build products, you'll start realizing that each of this has at some level some bips or percentage points improvement in terms of how people engage with products. And therefore, there is a reasonable amount of thought process that went into why things are the way they are. So something as simple as, let's say, the content, or sorry, the comments that are being shown. How much comment should I prefetch and show in the comment section, which makes it interesting and exciting for people to go 2 to 3 levels deeper into the comment section? Or should I not show comments? How does that affect the payload size of a feed? For example, does it end up bloating up the side of a post, or does it become less? What happens in networks where the latency is rather high? Does that increase the payload size? Should I therefore prefetch comments or not prefetch comments? So you have so many questions that are going into making something as simple as this feed. Yes, there are also questions as, okay, what should be the size of this photo that's shown? Is this the right size? Should it be bigger? Should it be smaller? What should be the font size? What should be the font weight? What happens to the fact that, how readable is a post? Ultimately, it's a text-based platform, right? Do people's eyesight permit for them to read for the size of text size that I'm putting out there? What color catches people's attention? What should be the layout? So all of these are such granular questions that the PM team had to answer, and answer well enough for you to see a post such as this, and for you to be actively engaging and deriving value out of. Otherwise, typically what happens when I see deconstruct is, most people say, well, a LinkedIn newsfeed has a post, and you stop there. That's where, when you stop paying attention to those minute granular details that help you actually appreciate good quality product decisions. Everybody knows there's a post, but what makes for a good engaging post? What are the quality signals there? What kind of choices that went behind it? It's when you answer those, or you try to answer those, you get to appreciate what is good quality product building versus bad quality product building. You have the ability to pay attention to those tiny details which make a big difference for the end consumer to see value, and therefore as a business to capture some part of that value back, right? Now, let's go to the topic that all of you were very excited and gave us the first set of answers. What were the product decisions to be made for crafting the newsfeed personalization experience? Now, before going into the question or the set of questions, I want you to take a stab at actually how do you structure this problem statement again. Now, if you notice again, over and over again, I am not jumping to answering questions, but I'm trying to put a structure so that I make my questions thorough, breadth-wise, and depth-wise. So if one were to look at personalization as a problem statement, what is the structure to this problem statement? How do I go about even asking the set of questions in such a way that I'm going broad and deep into all of the facets that make personalization happen? So can one of you identify, or some of you identify, what are the broad building blocks of personalization? So on one end, then you see the magic of timely, relevant content. On the other side, you see content being created. What are the building blocks in between? Think for a moment, what are all the possible scenarios that can happen from content creation to content ranking? attributes of the post. Sure, all of these are also nuances, but I'm looking for slightly larger level one blocks. Ranking is probably one of the blocks, so that's a clue I'm giving you. Personalization has many components, or NewsFeed personalization has many components. One amongst them is ranking, for which attributes of the user, etc., are the set of questions you want to answer. I want to see if you're able to identify the other blocks which help in translating production to the final ranking. Think for a moment of what can go right, what can go wrong. See if you can connect to some real world analogy of content being created and finally it reaching your inbox. Again, all of you are still over indexing on ranking as a block. Come out of that for a moment and say that if ranking is also one of the problem statements or subcomponents, what are the other components that have gone in as a set of processing activities that need to be done before you even personalize it? Attributes, weightage, sorting. Again, all of this is part of your ranking problem statement. Okay, let me show you how I am approaching this. If you think about personalization as a problem statement, the journey starts. Let's go all the way back from production side, right? You have given the audience, actors, the ability to create content, right? You can create text content, image content, video content, etc. So what's happening is there's this flurry of content people are creating, right? You can consider this as the equivalent of, let's say, think of the best analogy I can help you relate this with is a post office. Each of us are writing letters to people in different parts of the world. So I have the freedom to write whatever I like. So that's something you need to pay attention to, because I have a CRUD system which allows me to create, read, update, delete, post. But I'm also giving the freedom to write anything that I like. Therein also creates a flip side. Because I have the freedom to create whatever I like, I can create both useful content as well as harmful content, right? So if you to look at that, because you don't want to be a platform which curbs freedom of expression, but you also have a responsibility towards the trust and safety and well-being of the platform. So a CRUD platform allows you to create your content and create this massive repository of all the posts at any given instance. What then we also need to do is to ensure that only good quality content, or let me flip it, content which is harmless is going towards the users, because you've given people the ability to create and express. There can also be bad actors in the system. You can see people sending hate content, people putting out content which may not be appreciated by everyone. It could be toxic, it could be content which is sensitive. For example, people could put it for an extreme condition, put in pornographic content or violent content, and because it's freedom of expression, you can't sit and tell them at the time of creating that you can't do this. While you put guidelines, you need to have something much later which checks in on this quality of content. So there needs to be some kind of a mechanism that checks for the quality of content and then says, hey, if there are n amount of content being created, we have flagged m amount of them to be not good, and therefore we will have to take them off. So there has to be some kind of system that monitors it and keeps a check of what goes into quality, right? Once that is done, you also have some kind of grouping. So if you think about it, there could be 200 people who are creating content, and Deepak is following all of these 200 content. And like Deepak, there are many people who are consuming a wide range of contents from different followers. So what then has to happen is there has to be some kind of a grouping that says these are all the content groups which are content which is relevant for Deepak, and just club them together. Right? At this point of time, I'm not even doing the sorting. I'm just doing the clubbing process. Right? The analogy to this is your post office. Whenever you send a mail from, let's say, Bangalore to different parts of the world, your mail goes from your house to Bangalore post office, and all of that is collected in Bangalore post office central. That someone is doing the segregation to say, okay, posts that need to go to Mumbai, posts that needs to go to Delhi, posts that needs to go to Chandigarh, posts that needs to go to Chennai, right? At this point, you're not doing ranking because there's no need for ranking in the post office. But if you think about it here, I now get to know all the posts that are relevant for Deepak at any given instance of time. Then is when you decide, okay, Deepak has at instance N 200 posts. Obviously, Deepak doesn't have the time for all of these 200 posts. So now we need to figure out how to rank for Deepak. That's when ranking starts coming in, right? So if you notice, there's a whole range of pre-processing that is happening from production to personalization. One amongst them is post-ranking, but there's a lot of pre-processing that is done to make your personalization hyper-relevant. If you don't do this, you will end up then getting a lot of irrelevant posts coming towards you, right? So this is how you systematically break down the problem statement, right? So what we noticed was there is a system that is subsystem that is managing and maintaining all the inventory at any given point of time. You're noticing that any given point of time, there is a system that is doing quality checks to ensure that only good quality content is going towards you and making sure harmful content is not coming towards you. You're having a system that is grouping together and saying Deepak or actor X has n number of content and this is what we need to do the ranking. And that's when it passes to the ranking system. And that's where the next set of subsystems starts coming in, which is say, hey, given a set of users, what is the poster's profile? What is the poster's behavior? What kind of content does this person engage with? How is this post performing? What is the consumer behavior? What is the profile of the consumer who is consuming? And when I factor in all of those signals, how do I come up with a good ranking logic to decide what is post 1, post 2, post 3? Now, over and above that, in order for us to do a good ranking logic system, we also need to understand certain non-functional requirements. This is where, again, I see a lot of folks not spending a lot of time when they do the deconstructs. More often than not, we get caught up with only looking at UX attributes, business attributes, or user attributes, but rarely do we start asking the questions, what kind of technical limitations or attributes do I need to keep in mind while having to make these product decisions and choices? In this case, you have a situation where at any given point of time, let's say if you were to do take the DAU of LinkedIn at the point of time when I was making this slide was about say 900 million. You have about 900 million people who are actively consuming a feed on a daily basis. At any given instance of time, you also have therefore billions of posts that are being created. You also want to have some kind of a guiding principle to say that when a post is being shown to the user, under any network condition, you should be able to show it within a certain amount of time. If that doesn't happen, user is not going to engage. They're probably going to say that, okay, the system is down or there's a network issue. I'm going to close the app and move on. So you need to figure out what is the ideal latency time within which you send the final aggregated sorted logic of post to the user. I'm going to take one question that's come in. Madhav is saying, isn't post behavior, post content, post profile behavior part of post user level grouping? No, post user level grouping is specifically just mapping all of the posts that is relevant to me. That's about it. Within that post, let's say Deepak is eligible for 100 posts. To rank those 100 posts, I have to look for deeper signals. So level 1 is to say I have 100 inbox messages for Deepak, but amongst those 100, what should I show as number 1? What should I show as number 2? Requires you to go one level deeper, which is say, what is Deepak's nuance in terms of profile? What is his latest job profile looking like? So one is messages intended for Deepak at a very high level, but to do ranking, what is Deepak's latest job profile? What kind of posts have Deepak engaged with in recent times? What is the nature of this post? Can I have some reading upon that? How is this post performing? Who are the kind of people it's engaging with? Those are also signals, right? And this becomes a good feedback log for me to decide for Deepak, what are then the right set of content that should be shown. So there are two levels of filtration, because if you to do all this processing at one shot, it becomes a very complex set of operations to pull off. So you want to try to stagger it in a way that you do what I would call as, think of this as a multi-pass filter, where you're trying to do a high level segregation first, then to the next level of filtering, then to the next level of filtering, because as you get more and more granular, the cost of computation starts increasing. which then delays the time it takes for you to send out the final set of relevance, right? So some of these things start happening in the background as well. So you have one level of pass, which is these are probably all the posts eligible to Deepak. Then you have a system that is going to call and says, given historical data about Deepak, how do I then re-rank all of these posts? Now, there's a good chance that in this process, some posts may get missed out. And that is where you have the fine-tuning mechanism as well. So I hope that helps in clarifying that when you're doing user-level grouping, you're trying to do a broadband filter pass and not a very narrow-level filter pass. Otherwise, what happens is if you were to do all of this processing, you probably end up getting only one or two posts coming in. And that's the reason why ranking as a concept exists. You think that there's a post that is most important, and the least important post is further down. But overall, there's a set of posts which is relevant that I'm trying to do a first pass filter and pass to you. And then as you progress, you're trying to filter it in real time or with a little more signals. What can I improve in that subgrouping of messages that come towards you, right? So here is the set of questions that then we're going to answer, right? Given that you have to answer these technical questions and user level questions, again, to re-emphasize, most of us end up focusing on the user attributes, business attributes, but rarely do we focus on the technicalities. What is the scale? What is the number of users, actors involved? What kind of networks are people involved in? What kind of choices therefore emerge by looking at all of these attributes, which if I don't answer, is going to result in probably a great experience in, say, a country like a USA, but maybe in a country like India, and I'm trying to grow in tier 2 markets in India, my networks aren't great. And if I don't understand that, I probably will not be making good quality product decisions. Now, how do you deconstruct the ranking score? And this is where the set of questions that you folks started asking come into play, right? What are the algorithms that could be used? What should be the weights for ranking? How should I rank a fresh content versus unread content? Because if you think about it, at any given point of time, competing for my attention is probably new content which was created in T minus 10 seconds, but there's also equally important post which was created T minus 1 minute. And the reason why there's this competition that's happening is Deepak is just coming back to the system after 2 to 3 minutes. And therefore, you have fresh content as well as unread content. Should I even differentiate between the two, or should I treat them all as unread content? How do I make a choice between that? There's also going to be the challenge of similar content versus diversity of content. Because at some point, what's going to happen is when you build recommendation systems, it's very easy to start showing content which fits into a set of ideology or a set of models, right? Let us show only deeper content around product management, leadership, and technology with AI, because for some reason, Deepak in recent times has been only engaging with AI related content. But that is my recent behavior. Deepak also has other content that he would like to consume. How do I then make the trade-off between recency of interest versus historical interest? And how do I ensure that there could also be content that Deepak is interested in but he does not know about? How do I factor in that? And how do I build in models to account for those systems? Otherwise, you're going to get caught in what is called an echo chamber of a newsfeed, right? So a good newsfeed system, if you're trying to solve for, has to solve for both similarity as well as diversity and maintaining a healthy balance, because new diversities could help in building deeper interests. And then suddenly, I did not know this, but I'd like to go deeper, right? So how does a network manage these kind of conflicts, right? Then you have scenarios where you may have to have different models for different systems. See, one hypothesis say that I have a universal model which for recommending for people in a country or a device. It may so happen that mobile may have a very different form of consumption pattern as opposed to desktop. Reason being, in maybe desktop, I'm paying more attention towards long form content and maybe long form articles, but on mobile, because I'm on the go, I'm looking for snippets of content. Now, if I'm trying to build the same model to same, so for both use cases, but to the same user, it may so happen that one platform has negative impact in terms of engagement. So then one needs to take a step back and say, are behaviors of content consumption going to be different on different platforms, which require for me to rethink of models in a very differentiated fashion, right? Then you have aspects such as behavioral signals versus profile signals. Does my current job have any correlation with the kind of content that I'm consuming, or is my current job completely different? Think about an edge case where somebody is in sales, so all of their profile has historically been about sales, but this individual is interested in moving into product management. And this is a very genuine situation, right? If I over-index on only the profile, I'm missing out on the behavioral signals. How should I make the trade-off between the two? Should it be more towards behavior? Is it recent behavior? Is it historical behavior? How do I match the inflection point between all of this and then fine-tune it? Otherwise, that person who's so interested in moving to product management, because their historical behavior, because their profile is over skewed towards sales, I'm only going to get sales related content. How do I be a better salesperson? How do I do sales negotiation? But what this person really wants to learn is about product management. How do I connect to the people who are related to product management? So as you can start seeing that this is actually a very complex problem statement. It's not to say that you need to have answers for all of these problem statements, but are you thinking in these directions? Are you able to identify these attributes, these questions, and at least say, yes, I can start seeing how these pieces of the puzzle become complicated and it requires for someone to answer. As you notice, I'm not even trying to go into saying what the answer is because we see the answer. What I'm trying to do is envision and ask what kind of questions were they faced with, and can I start seeing the complete picture? And if I at least get to the direction of asking these questions and the complexities associated with it, I am able to improve my appreciation for the kind of detailing that goes into making good products. And therefore, tomorrow, when let's say you build a NewsFeed product, you've gone through this thinking process. You're able to say, when I evaluated NewsFeed, I had to think of all of these parameters because I could see this as answers. And I see all of these various actors, these circumstances where there was a salesperson who wanted to get product management feed, but then the newsfeed is not going to be ideally tuned for them. So there were probably a set of questions they had to answer so that the newsfeed is ideal for them. If I'm not able to go through that journey, when I build my product, let's say in, for example, ShareChat for a different context, or when I go to, let's say, Facebook or Instagram, some of these principles still hold true. And if I'm not able to understand some of these nuances, I have to redo this journey from ground up. But if I've done this journey in the past, I will be able to carry forward some of the thinking process. So I'm able to cut short and say, hey, folks, typically these are the kind of complexities that come. So are we even equipped to answer those questions? And therefore, if we don't answer it, we may have a very lopsided network that gets to be an echo chamber, or it only makes people go down a particular path. Or we know that if you do this for too long on the short term, on the midterm to long term, engagement starts drastically dropping because people get bored of seeing the same content over and over again. And that's why it's important to focus on trying to evaluate questions from all of these n different dimensions so that you're understanding the questions and thought process that go into building a good product or a great product like LinkedIn Newsfeed. Now, question to you folks. How many decisions do you think we have made so far? You've seen the set of questions that we have asked. I'll probably cycle back and you can see the list. How many questions do you think, or how many decisions do you think we have had to make so far? No sneak peeking and zooming into that next slide there. All right, for those of you who are able to guess the answer, we've almost made close to about 100 odd decisions. And this is just evaluating 7 types of posts and only evaluating 2 systems or 2 subsystems of the entire system. We have not even covered the entire length and breadth of LinkedIn Newsfeed, right? And that's again what I'm trying to emphasize on. Doing good deconstructs is an incredible amount of detailed work. It's not saying, hey, this is LinkedIn, it has 10 features, it has XYZ competitive advantage, I'm done with it. No, it involves getting to all of these supreme nitty-gritties and asking these questions. It doesn't matter if you're not able to get the answers. But the goal is to get to these questions enough to know that, hey, some of these questions I can answer, some of these questions I really don't know how to answer. And that's where your true learning starts. When you're able to be honest intellectually with yourself to say, I don't know what questions to ask, or I don't know the answer to these questions. And that's where you go one level deeper to say, okay, how can I go about answering these questions? And then starts your research work. So deconstructions are in many ways an honest mirror that you hold up to yourself to what you know, what you don't know, and then embark on a journey of self-discovery to find out answers to these questions that you don't know. Or if you're not able to ask too many questions, it is also a good reason to say, it seems I don't know how to pay attention to detail. How do I go about it? If you're able to arrive at one of these two conclusions, a deconstruct is being done in an honest fashion. It's not to put it out on LinkedIn. It's not to get those likes. It's not to compress it in 10 minutes and say, I've done this deconstruct. None of that adds value to you in your life. You learn when you realize you don't know what you don't know. And that's where your true learning starts from. Now, I'm going to zoom out and show you what happens when you add a few more systems. Right now, you only saw NewsFeed, but you've not seen what happens when NewsFeed interacts with other systems. For example, many of you who are using NewsFeed would have noticed that whenever a post is made, you get a notification. You get a push notification. It comes out as an email. So then there is this NewsFeed system which is interacting with your communication platform. And therefore, there's this new set of interesting relationships that happen because of that. And problems start emerging because of that, right? You are dependent on the profile service to pull in information, right? Because if you're to display the user's profile picture, it's not coming in from the personalization system. It's coming from the profile services. So there is therefore some kind of a contract that determines how and when to fetch this information. And therefore, the information that comes in terms of the person's name, their designation, their title, their latest job, their profile picture, etc. Right? Now, then there's also other systems that probably are coming together to create all of this orchestration for you to see what you see as the full-fledged personalization experience of the newsfeed, right? And if we don't try to map out this entire journey, you're again going to get siloed into thinking that personalization is just ranking or newsfeed is just ranking, but not. It actually involves a content management system. It involves interacting with your communications platform. It involves interacting with your profile services. It involves a certain set of relationship which trying how these two systems should work together. And if we don't see this entirety, we get very lopsided into understanding what goes into truly building a magical system or a magical product, which creates the kind of experience that you want to. Think about it. If your LinkedIn newsfeed did not send you that notification, how many of you would even come back and open? Right? So some of us are very actively opening up LinkedIn because we're addicted to it. But a lot of people need to be brought back by showing interesting content. So then comes the question, what kind of post should I send as a notification? What happens if there are 10 notifications competing for Deepak? Then there are notifications about jobs. There are notifications about other things that are happening off platform. Which ones do I prioritize? Should I show the content from Deepak's best friend? Should I show the job notification? Should I show the content which is going to be most value adding in terms of learning? How do we compete for these systems? Now, this is where the problem becomes even more exciting and interesting. What happens when a user deletes a post? How should the notification system manage it? How do we, like, let's say I as a user create a post and then it gets going into the content management system. It goes through the content filtration to say, okay, this is clean content, it could be put out there. Then from there, it goes into a ranking system. It gets sent to my audience. And then Deepak realizes, oh man, I've actually said something wrong. I need to take this off the platform. I go back and delete. Does the notification then get sent to the user? Or if it is already being queued into the notification system, how do you manage that circumstance? Now, that's a very complex problem to solve for, right? Now, there are many such kind of edge cases which are actually mainstream problems that you need to think about. So if you just look at, well, newsfeed, it's a personalization problem, you're missing out on this entirety of everything that goes into making these choices. Think about another situation. Deepak creates a post and it's getting sent to the feed. A day later, Deepak has a new job update. He's going on from, say, being senior director to VP of a company. Now, suddenly that weightage changes because I was previously senior director at a company. Maybe the weightage when I'm a VP at another company drastically changes, and that changes how people perceive my status or credibility about a particular post. Now, should I update my post in real time, or should I say, no, this post has already been published and I cannot change it? How should these two systems talk to each other to resolve this? Now, if we don't get into these kind of nitty-gritties, we fail to understand what actually comes together to make these kind of magical products and what creates impact from a consumer standpoint. What happens again, if you think about it, when a new user is starting and there are no connections and not following anyone? What does the newsfeed then look like? What is this cold start problem going to look like? Who should I recommend? When should I recommend? How should I recommend? Right? So when we start going through all of these questions, as we start realizing how much good thinking has gone behind making a product as beautiful and complex. Not to say that LinkedIn newsfeed, I still have my own gripes with it, no doubts, but it's a really, really good product, very, very well thought out. A lot of intricacies that have gone into making the kind of choices that results in us getting value out of it as a product. So one other activity that I love to do whenever I do a deconstruct is to follow up with a customer journey. So while doing a systems view is also important, another parallel view that I try to build is a customer journey view, which gives me a very detailed map to help understand how does all of these systems perform for different customers in different states of their customer journey. Now, for example, in the case of a newsfeed customer, there are going to be customers who are new users, who are active users, who are reactivated users. Now, when this person opens the app, they could either engage with the newsfeed or they may not engage with the newsfeed. And then, if the user does not engage with the newsfeed, they may engage with other use cases. For example, I may open up LinkedIn, but my primary reason could be to actually go into the jobs portal, right? And that gives a whole different kind of behavior. Or I may go into my messages, my inbox, and have a set of activities that go on that, right? Or I may choose to engage with newsfeed, and that results in a certain set of downstream data points being generated. All of this goes into the systems that I spoke about, which helps in me as a platform owner to decide how do I interpret different customers at different states so that I can optimize my system to give the right content to the right user at the right time. And for the creators, how do I entice them into creating content? And if you are a consumer, what is the right kind of content to show? And if you were to add this dimension, the number of questions then even become 10x more complex. How do you treat a new user problem? How do you treat a reactivated user problem? What happens if it's a reactivated user who has lost a job? Maybe a different problem statement altogether, right? So all of this creates pathways and bifurcations which necessitate for us to ask questions. And by answering those questions, you see the products that result in what you're consuming. Can we identify those questions is probably the most important aspect of doing this entire deconstruction exercise. Now, the last part of it that I like to focus on is how do you measure success from a user standpoint and from a business standpoint. Now, again, I'm going to open up the floor to you folks in terms of what kind of metrics do you think we should measure? This should be fairly simple, but can also be a googly of sorts. What kind of metrics do you think we would be measuring for a product such as LinkedIn Newsfeed? I'm not going to say that there's only one metric. There could be a bunch of metrics that we measure. So share with me what you think are metrics that you would measure from a user standpoint and from a business standpoint. And then I'll double click on one last aspect of metrics, which I see missing whenever people do deconstructs. Cool. So I see Malabar is saying that we should be looking at daily active users, monthly active users, good metrics. Yes, I agree. What else should we be looking into? Time spent on posts I liked, comments, shared. Yes, good metrics. Number of posts per user. Fantastic. So now let me actually move into the nuance that really matters, right? While most people make a reasonably good set of metrics, the nuance that I like for people to focus on is getting into the nitty gritties of actually defining the metric. I'll give you an example of one such metric. Some of you have rightly identified that you should measure read time, right? And I'm going to pick that particular metric to give you a specific nuance. Why is it important for you to deconstruct a metric? Now, what I mean by that is not just identifying the metric, but trying to understand the definition and the reasoning that goes behind a particular metric. For example, most often not, anytime you pick a metric, common metrics are saying DAU and MAU. But the question is, how do you define active users? What is the metric of activity? Is it someone who's opened the app once? Is it someone who has opened the app and engaged with the app? If so, what is the quality of engagement that qualifies for active? And why do we need that to make that kind of distinction? And can we identify scenarios where the metric will fail? And that, in essence, is good critical thinking about metrics. Why is this important? Is because when you start building your products or features, more often than not, you end up coming up with very generic metrics, but not getting into the nitty gritties of definition, which results in poor quality measurement of impact. So it's very easy to go and say that, well, all social products use DAO by mouth. Great. But is DAO by mouth right for you? Is it actually giving you the right kind of signals? What defines activity? Where are situations where activities could be misinterpreted and therefore give you false positive signals that result in you believing that your product is successful, but in reality it's a failure? And it is that level of detailing that you need to focus in to understand whether or not a metric is good, bad, or ugly. And it's in that definition that you start seeing value. Let me give you an example of post read time, right? Now, why am I focusing on post read time as opposed to, let's say, something like post engagement or session? So, as part of the open ended exercise, I'd probably list out all of these metrics. But it was to compare and contrast between post read time versus post engagement, why would I pick read time over engagement time? For example, one could define engagement as, for a given post, the number of people who have liked, commented, and reposted. It's a good metric, no doubts. But however, if I look at some signals which that is being shown to me, I can make a rather intuitive assessment that it's probably not the only reason on determining whether or not a post should be shown to a user. To give you a real life example, see this post here. If you notice, this post has gotten close to about 400k impressions, which means 400k unique people have seen this post. However, only 2000 people have expressed their like, 169 people have given their comments, and 59 people have reposted. So if you look at that ratio, 0.6% of the audience is who have active engaged. But the audience that has been shown to is close to about 4 lakh people. Now, this is where I tend to do a little bit of customer research as well. I try to reach out to people and say, hey, do you necessarily actively express your likes, comments when you consume content? Or is it only a very, very deeply entrenched set of people who express that? And when you speak to people, you start realizing that there are a lot of people who aren't necessarily, interested in expressing explicit likes, but they get value, which means they spend time reading your content. They click on the post, they do the see more, they spend about 1 or 2 minutes reading the post, they probably do a reread, etc. So all of that helps you understand that the metric here for actually understanding high quality engagement is not necessarily just looking at, say, something as simple as engagement per post, which is saying let's sum together the number of likes, comments, and reposts, but actually looking into a metric such as read time, which is the amount of time that someone spends reading a particular post. Now, this is where it becomes interesting. How do you define what is the read time of a post? When do you define a post being read, to when do you define when the post is starting to being read, right? If you think about it, a user can be rapidly scrolling through the post, or they could have at any instance 2 to 3 posts in a real estate of mobile or on a desktop. How do you know which post is being read? Now, that is a complication. One could just start by saying, well, read the time. But what is the read time for a particular post? How do you define it? And that complexity is what teaches you how to define good metrics. Because when you start building a product such as this, eventually your engineer is going to come back and say, well, Deepak, you asked me to implement read time, but how do I measure it? Where does reading begin and end? This is an infinite scroll. What is the definition of beginning of read time? What happens when there are 3 posts? Do I start the counter for A post? Should I start the counter for B post? Should I start the counter for C post? When does it end? How do I measure it? That nitty-gritty is where the complexity arises, and good product thinking is going into the details and defining, okay, what could be edge cases? How should I define the start time and end time? Is it by the virtue of the number of pixels that is shown? Is it 10% of pixels? Is it 20% of pixels? Or should a post be visible 50% for me to make an educated guess that probably when the user is starting to read? How do I solve for false positive? I show maybe 30% of the pixels, but the user is actually going to skip through the post. So has the user really read it or not read it? As you can see, something as simple as defining the read time of a post has such incredible amount of complexity. And that is what most people miss out on when they do a deconstruct. They stop with saying, let me measure read time. That's not good enough. You have to get into the absolute nitty-gritties of how do you define it, how does it work, when will it work, when will it fail, while running through a multitude of scenarios of different types of users consuming the product and making an educated saying, okay, this is probably what makes for a good definition. And maybe when that opportunity arises in your company, you test it out, and if it sees it works, it's great. But if it doesn't, well, you know that your thinking process is not in the right direction. I'll take one particular question that Vaibhav is asking. When we look at success metrics, is there also dimension concept of product failure metrics? So if you notice, I am not classifying any of this as success and failure metrics. I largely classify metrics into two broad buckets: behavioral metrics and business metrics. Each of this in itself will either succeed or fail. Right now, the reason why I have distinction between behavioral metrics and business metrics is, if you think about any product at the end of the day, you're making a bunch of changes for the end user, which they act upon immediately. For example, let's say you make some change in terms of sort ranking for, let's say, the newsfeed, which is supposed to give more weightage to an ads. The most immediate implication of it is, if your ads are good, I should be spending more time consuming the ad. So you should see the read time of an ad go up by virtue of your ranking change. That is for me the most immediate implication. The lag metric of it is that I should start seeing that my advertisers therefore be willing to spend more money, therefore probably choosing a certain type of ads which give better quality results, and therefore my ad revenues growing up over a period of time. If my behavioral metric is not improving in a statistically significant fashion, it means my product has failed. My hypothesis that I thought about what could result in my ranking of ads becoming better and therefore improving ad revenues has failed. So, product failure metrics is for the behavior as well as business metrics. They can either succeed or fail. What's more important is identifying the right behavioral metrics, which is measurable in the immediate near term. You cannot pick a behavioral metric which will take 6 months for it to reflect. All behavioral metrics require for an almost immediate sense of causality, cause and effect. I perform an action, you almost immediately see it, and it is also measurable. It means that when that action is performed, the metric is sensitive enough for the metric to have variance. If you are picking a metric for which there is going to be no change, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to know whether the hypothesis that you started off with has any real implication. And if your behavior is not changing, you can almost guarantee that your business metric doesn't change. Now, there is an interesting scenario here. You may release a feature, it may have no behavioral impact, but your business metric can change. For the reason could be many. It could be that you have faulty instrumentation, or there could be some noise that's coming in the system. The reason also we have this behavioral business connectivity is, more often than not, if you just measure business positive and negative metrics, and if you just see the business metric going up, you can say that, oh, my experiment has succeeded, my thesis was right. But that's not true, because the primary behavior has not changed the way it has intended to change, and that has not spilled over enough for your business metric to change. There is also the inverse, where your behavioral metrics change, but it is not having enough sensitivity in terms of your business metrics change. And therein comes a wide range of sensitive and insensitive business metrics. For example, certain metrics such as DAO, MAO, which is on the midterm, etc., may have a slightly more sensitivity to change. But certain business metrics, for example, let's take the case of an e-commerce company which is trying to measure the business implication of returns. You're trying to do something which is going to prevent people from absurdly returning more fashion products back to the platform. The problem with this entire thing is the population of people who are going to return is going to be a fraction, and that happens after, say, 30 or 40 days. So the number of people who are going to come into that funnel is going to be tiny, and that lift that you're going to see out of people who are going to return is going to be even more tinier. So trying to measure those kind of metrics become incredibly hard, which means you need to have stronger proxy metrics, or typically what companies tend to do is start building machine learning models which help to build that causality between behavior, short-term business metrics, and long-term business metrics, such as, say, retention, returns of, say, goods which our customers are finding faulty, and etc. So all metrics can be seen from the point of view of failure and success. What's important is its understanding of sensitivity in the short term, mid-term, and long term, and classifying them as behavioral metrics and business metrics. So I hope, Vaibhav, that helps you understand how to look at metrics in a totality. So one should do this entire exercise. Some of you do that, but if you don't, this is the most important activity to do. But far more important to build good product sense is to build the ability to get into the nitty gritties of defining how to define that metric. That's what adds value when you're actually building products, because if you don't know how to define a good metric, you will go with a very general consensus view, and those broad-based sweeping statements of how to measure usually aren't detailed enough to capture nuances where the metric fails terribly and ends up giving you false positives. So that's probably the other important takeaway from this case study: knowing how to get into the nitty-gritties of deconstructing a metric and understanding points of success and points of failure and where it will terribly fail, for you to get going so deep to finding out how do I define it so well that I can account for all of these points of failure in my metrics definition. With that, we come to the end of LinkedIn's NewsFeed Deconstruct. By no means is to say this is exhaustive. The goal was for me to today show you what does good detailing look like, and areas of detailing that I feel that a lot of folks are missing out on, and how to therefore do a good deconstruction. I'll wrap up with probably 3 minutes, just quickly spending into how do you build a good deconstruct knowledge report. You ideally should be trying to do deconstructs across, both the same industry that you operate in as well as different industries, because you tend to learn a lot of things from outside practices. Good products as well as bad products, big companies as well as small companies, so that you get a very broad view of various thinking process that go into making good products as well as bad products. The second thing that I want to again overemphasize is do one good deconstruct over 10 average or 20 super poor deconstructs. You're doing this to learn, first and foremost, for yourself. So quality matters over quantity. And as you realize, this will take an incredible amount of time. So what really matters is you spend a lot of time going through one good case study and try to attack it from very different directions and try to get into as much detailing as possible. Otherwise, you can do a superficial activity. You may put it out on LinkedIn. 10 people say, oh, fantastic, that's a great job. But they don't care any more than anybody else. You're doing this for yourself, and you want to get into the nitty-gritties of what you don't know. And unless you know what you don't know, you cannot learn. The third aspect is documenting. Now, this is something that you do really well, but try to build a more structured repository where you can document your deconstruct so that you can go back and see how your thinking process has evolved over a period of time. One important aspect is when you do your deconstruct, rather than trying to get peer feedback or getting likes from people on LinkedIn, it's nice to do. But what's more important is, can you find out damn good engineers, designers, and damn good PMs and actually get them to give you feedback and say, hey, can you just go through the set of questions that I've asked? And do you really think I'm asking the right set of questions? Am I really getting into the nitty-gritties? And more importantly, for aspects that you don't know, can you ask the subject matter expert to explain, saying, hey, I'm now struggling. I understand this concept called as ranking. But what exactly is ranking? Sure, I've heard of machine learning. Am I going to be satisfied in just saying, well, the answer is machine learning? Or can I start going into 2 to 3 levels deeper? Okay, what are the various machine learning models out there? How does ranking actually happen? How does, let's say, a company like Netflix choose to rank its movies? How does a company like, let's say, YouTube choose to rank? Is there any difference in these models? When do these models succeed and fail? What are the complexity behind these models? What happens in a cold start situation? That is the kind of detailing that you want to get into, and not just say the answer is machine learning model. I think everybody who builds product, and even someone who doesn't build product, will now give you the answer saying, if I look at personalization, the answer is machine learning. That doesn't help you. What you want to get into is the nitty-gritties of what kind of models, which models work, which models fail, what are the limitations of various kinds of models, which model works in which conditions best, what are the metadata that is required for each of these models. And if you don't try to find the answers to that, you're going to get into this very superficial knowledge trap of saying the answer is machine learning, but beyond that, you really don't know anything else. And when the day comes for you to solve the problem, and you have to actually apply machine learning, your data science person is going to say model X, and you are not even in a position to debate with them to say, hey, it sounds great, but I know that the first principle of the problem necessitates data model X and Y, and we know that we don't have access to this. So do you really think this model is the right model for it? You will not be in a position to have that kind of healthy debates. And therefore, you will have to do whatever your data science team asks you to do. And suppose they overcomplicate solutions, you will not be in a position to even push back and say, guys, this is overcomplicating. This is really not necessary. This complexity or this problem statement actually requires for you to solve it in a very different way, because I've spent time understanding the first principles of this data model. That's why it's really important for you to go beyond saying, I know network effects, I know that there is machine learning models. Knowing these nomenclature is not going to help you anywhere in life. What you want to get into is that 10 levels deeper, saying what are the various types of network effects out there? What are the various types of networks that come into being? How do they come about being? What are the various types of models are there? And if you don't get to that depth, your knowledge is going to be superficial, and most people are going to find it very easy to convince you to do what they want you to do instead of you having conviction on what is the right way of solving problems. The last part of it is the entire reason why I do this deconstruct is to building your pattern library. You do this enough number of times, you'll start seeing common set of questions that a lot of good product teams ask, and therefore you know these are good questions to ask. And when you see that somebody does it the bad way or products being built in a terrible way, you start seeing that these are fundamental questions they should be asking, but they're not asking. That's the reason why this product fails in the first place, right? So building that good quality question repository and building it out and connecting to high quality product outcomes that we've seen in the past, as well as bad quality questions that were asked or questions that were not asked in the first place resulted in the products being terrible, allow for you to realize that when you look at a product, saying that these product teams aren't asking XYZ questions, and that's the reason why this product is failing in the first place. That repository is leverage. Like I said, that leverage is what allows you to make high quality decisions super fast and see the kind of impact that your organization wants you to see. And over time, it allows you to be a person who delivers high quality hit products versus being a very theoretical person. With that, we come to the end of our deconstruction. Perhaps the one last heuristics that I use to understand whether or not you have good deconstruction skills is you are almost often always able to reverse engineer a reasonable portion of the PRD or the questions that went into making that PRD. If you can answer the questions that went into making that PRD, you more often than not have asked the right set of questions. So summarizing, if you do a great deconstruct, your first principles thinking become damn good. You become incredibly detail oriented. More importantly, you know which details really matter into making great products. Those details help you to build patterns. Because you build those patterns, you build incredible leverage into being cost effective. And most importantly, you get to know what you don't know. And that, in essence, is the ultimate reason why you should do. We learn because we need to know what we don't know. And if we don't know what we don't know, we're going to always make bad choices in life. And ultimately, be it products or life, it's all about making high quality decisions. And being honest to ourselves about what we don't know is where our good learning starts from. So with that, the session comes to an end. And now I'm going to open up the floor for questions. I'm just going to hope that I don't click the wrong button here. So again, this is, as you can notice, a very interesting problem in YouTube Studio. Being the first time user, I don't know which button to click to end the screencasting. And I hope this is the right button. Awesome. Great. Now, I know that I've overshot, but I'm only hoping that I've overshot time for the right reasons and you're okay with me going over time. Thank you all for being a very, very patient audience. I'm so sorry. I can't see you or hear you. And that is a little bit of a disadvantage for me because I really can't, empathize with what you're going through. So feel free to be very brutally honest in the comments section. I would love for you folks to go to the comments and share your honest opinion about what you thought about this session, what went well, what can I do to improve. Like I say, I'm not an expert. I'm also learning along the way. And every bit of feedback that you give me helps me do a better job. This is the first time I'm trying to do a YouTube live. The reason why I did a YouTube live is in the past when I tried to do it using Zoom, there were limitations in terms of the number of people who could join. And for that sheer reason, I wanted to open up the platform for more people to join and not have that restriction. And therefore, I probably have made a couple of mistakes along the way while using YouTube Live, so please forgive me for that. But if not anything else, it does become a little, I do see a little bit of challenges because I'm not able to have as rich a kind of engagement as I'd like to have with you. But we do have chat, so now I'm going to pay attention to the chat. Feel free to ask me any and every question, first and foremost related to this deconstruct that we first had. And then if there's anybody else who wants to ask any other question as well, happy to answer them. But I'd like to keep that towards the very end so that we don't distract ourselves from the primary reason why we got here for today's conversation. I'm pretty sure all of you have a lot of questions. In fact, I saw a few of those questions as well along the way. But I would like to first and foremost focus only on this deconstruct. Ask in that specific direction so that The answers help you to connect the dots that I probably failed in answering effectively during the course of the deconstruct. That way, the session comes to a logical conclusion. Don't worry, the session is recorded, so you can always come back and rewind, fast forward, and see the points that you want to get specific answers for. With that, opening up the floor for questions. I will try to answer it in a chronological fashion. So whosoever asks first, their answers or their questions get answered first. No particular preference to anyone's question, but it's just a matter of what questions come first into the chat box. So with that, waiting eagerly for the first set of questions. I'm going to also see if there's, in case someone has asked questions while typing. So I think the very first question Madhav has asked is, how much time should one spend towards doing a good quality deconstruct? So if you notice in the slide towards the very end, I said, aim to give yourself at least 1 quarter to do one deconstruct. Right? I'm not asking you to rush it and do a deconstruct in 1 day, a deconstruct in a month. Good quality deconstructs, ones that you're doing for your personal learning purposes. Pick a product that really excites you and has a reasonable degree of depth and breadth. For example, LinkedIn NewsFeed would be a good quality example of such depth and breadth product. Amazon one-click checkout. It looks so simple, but behind that is incredible complexity. Pick a product like that. So don't pick a product which is like a button and try to deconstruct. There's nothing much to deconstruct. It's a button at the end of the day. It has a color, it has an attribute, it performs an action. A product has to perform an important function or a goal. So with that goal, try to work and say what kind of product helps in encompassing what you see as a interesting complex function that you can't fathom and you really want to get to the nitty-gritties. For example, Uber's booking process. Select a destination, a start point, end point, and you pick. That entire journey has so many things going behind the scenes. Try to deconstruct that. Something as simple as a checkout page has innumerable amount of complexities. What does a good checkout product look like? How does search ranking function? Something as simple as a sign-up page in itself has so much detailing that someone would just say that, well, it's collecting a user's email and password. But that's just what you see. There's so much that goes on behind the scene. And I'm just giving you some clues to think in that direction, right? So pick one of those products and give yourself about a quarter's time. There's no rush. Who you're trying to prove this to? You want to learn, right? So if you want to learn, give yourself that time to spend, get into the nitty-gritties. And it requires for you to use the product as well. You don't just wake up one fine day and say, oh, this product can be made 10x better. That's just you being, for a lack of a better word, ultra egoistic to think that if you can look at a product in 2 seconds and think what can be better. Sure, once you've built credibility and expertise to look at things and reverse engineer, then that's great. Early in your career, that's just too much judgment and opinions without having spent sufficient time. So rather spend time going through the product. Use it 1 day, 2 days, 10 days. Put yourself in the shoes of 10 different actors and try to see how it looks for them, right? Get other people to use that product, see how they use it. Build that time frame to observe so that you can do good deconstructs. Otherwise, you're just rushing through it for no good reason. Life is long, your career is long. It's no reason to rush through to build solid foundation. I'm a very slow person, but it has helped me compound over a period of time. And that's what gives me the depth to attack problems today. So it's something that I've taken as a very long-term opinion on life. Do things slow and steady so that it gives compounding effect. And one principle that I hold very near and dear in my heart is this principle from the Navy SEAL. Slow is smooth, smooth fast. Which means that when you do things incredibly smooth, you start building that muscle memory. And when you start building that muscle memory, when tomorrow something happens, your ability to react becomes lightning fast. But if you don't build the foundation for good muscle memory, you don't know how to respond. And therefore, you're going to do a haphazard attack. And therefore, it's not going to have depth, it's not going to have quality, it's not going to have high quality attached to it. So I hope that gives a very long but meaningful answer towards how to think about time that you need to spend. Don't rush to things in life. There's no value in rushing to things in life. Okay, great. The question that I see. Why do you think LinkedIn introduced games on the platform? Good question, but I'll take this as a separate problem statement. It's not related to a deconstruct. It's more of another deconstruct in itself. So sorry, but I'll have to take this as another problem statement. Saurabh's question: can we approach deconstructs at a feature level instead of a big product? For example, listing page of Swiggy rather than deconstructing Swiggy. Absolutely, you should. In fact, don't try to deconstruct. In fact, that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that people do. When they talk about deconstruct, they do an incredibly super Uber level deconstruct. What is Uber? You're not going to get into the Uber has so many products, homepage, merchandising, recommendation systems, your notification systems, your ad systems. All of that come together to make Swiggy. So the problem is when most people do deconstruct, they end up taking uber large problems. You would probably take a year to do a good deconstruct of a problem like Swiggy. Rather, take a part of Swiggy. Take up what does the sign up journey look like? What does the ranking logic look like? What does the checkout page of Swiggy look like? What is the deconstruction behind it? What does the ads platform of Swiggy look like? That allows you to have reasonable breadth of complexity and a lot of depth that helps you to understand the systems that go behind it. Swiggy, if you think about it, is a system of systems. It's an ecosystem. Many products come together. Over and above that, you have multiple business lines. You have Instamart, you have Swiggy food delivery, then you have Swiggy, Genie, and probably a few other businesses. If you're trying to just look at all of those, you're probably going to do a very superficial job and you're probably just going to get caught into strategic business thinking. The problem is early in your career, you are not going to spend so much time doing strategy problem statements like what is the next big business unit you should start. You're actually going to do hardcore product building, which is say, given a business product, what product should I build? What is the consumer's problem and how do I solve about it in the right way? If you're not spending your time building that depth, you are definitely not going to be in a good position to make company level strategy problems. So most of your deconstruct as well, I see just focusing uber level on corporate strategy, and even people who spend time in corporate strategy suck at it. I'm being very honest. There are times where I don't really know what is a good corporate strategy because I don't have good depth of knowledge. So trying to go too far out into doing corporate strategy deconstruct, I think is a wish-wash activity that people ask you to do. Avoid doing those things. First, build good foundation into building good products that deliver value to business and to the consumers, and see how is that strategically valuable. Over a period of time, you'll see how what good strategies pan out so that you can do good strategy deconstructs. Do not conflate strategy deconstruct with product deconstructs. Many times I see most people doing strategy deconstruct. Should Instamart get it? Should Swiggy open up this new line of business? That is not a deconstruct. That is a business strategy case, right? And even people who come from McKinsey struggle at doing those problem statements. So if anybody asks you to do that, being very honest, that's not the right direction. You want to focus your early part of your career. Strategy is a different problem statement, requires a different thinking process, but the foundation of it, especially in tech and products, starts by doing good product work over a period of time to build those patterns, know what constitutes great corporate strategy or business strategy. How to join my product community? I will put the link in this video so that you folks can find it and join it. Does anything change with deconstruction if it's a B2B product versus B2C product? Yes, there is one aspect which makes B2C easier than B2B. It is the sheer accessibility of B2B products. Many a times, B2B products are behind paywalls, which make it difficult for you to access certain types of products. Not to say all kinds of products, certain kinds of products become difficult, especially enterprise grade products, which are like you have to buy a corporate account to access it. No, those become different. The way to solve that is if you're working inside a company, look at all the enterprise level products inside your company and try to do deconstruct of those. Likewise, if there are B2B SaaS products which give you freemium access, you can deconstruct those. If your finances permit, buy some low price version of an enterprise B2B product, which allows you to play with the product. You cannot deconstruct a product that you cannot access and use over a period of time. Otherwise, it's just pure theory, and you're not getting into the nitty-gritties of the workflows, how it could function, how does the system respond under various conditions. You will not be able to see all of those things happening. So, easier to do B2C. It's not to say B2B is difficult. Some end up being very difficult, like I say, if it's like enterprise accounts, etc. But try to pick that which is accessible to you. And if you do enough of those, you'll be able to draw balance. For example, if let's say you're working in a company and you have access to SAP for, let's say, some HR related practice, and you go through the flows, because you're the manager or the employee using that product and it's freely accessible as part of your environment, deconstruct that product. Go through it and see how does it function. Why do they think the way it does? what are the choices that were being made. And therefore, you get a mental model of how various enterprise products think about it. And you'll see over a period of time what are enterprise products good at and what are enterprise products bad at. Deconstruct methods seem more like understanding strategy systems. How about deconstructing user experience? Examples about evaluating onboarding systems for different products. Everything that we did right now also had user experience attached to it. For example, what is the user experience for a newsfeed? What should be the size of the image? How should you sequence it? How do you make it visible, accessible, clickable? All of that is UX. It is not systems. It is not strategy at all. So I think there is this incredible, I don't know, maybe bias that is there in the market to say that certain kinds of problems are usability problems. Anything that has a pixel attached to it is a usability problem. Anything that requires for a human to interact is a usability problem. Therefore, your newsfeed needs to think about everything in totality about what makes it usable, accessible, memorable, in order for me to build the habits for using the product. If I come use the product and on day two I don't know how to reuse the product, it means it has a usability issue. So one cannot just say that it is over-indexed on a lot of technology or machine learning, and therefore it's not a usability problem. There is a lot of usability that has gone into this, right? So sure, there could be some problems which are over-indexed on usability, but all of these problems also have anywhere there is user interaction attached to it, which requires for users to build familiarity to use a product repeatedly over a period of time, is a usability problem. It has UI components to it. It has UX components to it. It has a lot of deep user research behind that as well. So do not discard this as non-UX problem. This case study probably has incredible amount of UX attached to it. Go back through the videos again and you'll start see the kind of questions that I've been asking to understand what is the usability component to it. In a corporate setup, how can we deconstruct efficiently, considering we have to optimize for time? Well, Ashwin, the hard answer to it is if you want to get good at building skills, you have to go over above the time that you spend in your company. Your company time is going to go towards solving problems in the here and now, which means you need to go over above that to invest into learning about the products within your own organization. That's the only way, because with the 8-9 hours you're going to spend, everyone inside the organization is going to be demanding of your time. I wish companies could make for time within it, but given the pressures in the corporate world and the market today, your 8 hours will be going towards solving here and now problems, and therefore you need to invest time outside of that to do this activity. It's not going to be possible to say that, well, in the 4 hours, can you dedicate time to learning? Sadly, that's not going to happen. So you have to make time to deconstruct over and above, which means your weekends go toward it, your evenings could go toward it, but such is life. If you want to be the best in class in something, it requires for us to make sacrifices. Life is about making hard sacrifices, hard choices, hard trade-offs. If things were to be easy, it's going to be very difficult. There are equally hard, ambitious, hungry people who are willing to make certain trade-offs. What I don't expect you to make trade-off is health. That's probably where I draw the line. Do not do things which affect your health on the long term. But if you are able to make time to invest into health, everything else over above that is a choice. Relationship versus skills. Travel versus skills. Netflix versus skills. Hard choices. Building products is all about hard choices. Progressing in career is all about hard choices, but not at the cost of health. That's where I draw the line. I will not push anyone to sacrifice health. That's something I hold near and dear. So with health being hygiene and table stakes, everything else is up for grabs. You have to decide what kind of life you want in life, and therefore where are you going to invest your time. This is the hard, brutal answer that I'd like to give. I don't want to make it seem like wish-wash that, oh, everything is possible. Time is limited. There are hungry people out there. There are ambitious people out there. What are you willing to sacrifice? The only thing I request people not to sacrifice is their health. Everything else is your personal choice. Souvik, could you suggest some repository of case studies or blog that could improve our foundations on first principles thinking? There are a couple of videos that I already have on my channel. Check through that. That should be a good starting point. I'll see if I can start collating any other videos which I think hit a high quality bar on first principles thinking. Are there any other good deconstructs that we can refer to? It is difficult to find an example of detailed deconstructs on LinkedIn, Google. Most are high level only. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I was personally unhappy and not satisfied with the depth that people were getting to. And that's the reason why I'm putting out a lot of free content on LinkedIn.
While I don't have the time to do a lot, I'm trying to make sure that the ones that I do give you enough breadth and depth that can be replicated across many other products. So this in itself, you use this as a framework. Just go through the same video multiple times and then start trying to attack different problems. So once you have this foundation, it's then more about practice and then coming back to seeing, are you really getting into the depth of it? Probably more important is trying to find a community of people who are like-minded and want to be depth-oriented rather than superficial. If you can form that small close-knit community that cares about depth, that probably is going to add a lot more value to you as well, Madhav. So see if you can form that community and then look through these videos. I'll also try to collate and see, and I'll also try as much as possible to create new videos in that direction. How to improve deconstruction muscle apart from practice? Are there any other resources to bring in external viewpoint and overcome blind spots? Sadly, product building is all about practices. The more you do, the better you get in. The way you eliminate blind spots is by having a good network of people that you can bounce off your deconstructs with, because each of us have a way of viewing the world. When three different people view the same problem, you'll start seeing that person A viewed it in a certain depth, person B viewed it in certain depth, person C viewed it in certain depth. Combined together, is it deep and broad enough? Again, if you notice, practice and a good community is what gives you the strength to go deep. More importantly, do you have the right kind of people who have built prior expertise in building such kind of depth, who can give you that kind of high quality feedback? It's very easy to look at it and say this is good, but is there someone who can give you very, very pointed feedback saying this problem framing was not good, or did you notice in this UX there were 10 different attributes but you only focused on one? That kind of feedback is what gets you better. Otherwise, just saying good, bad, ugly, you have great problem sense is really not helpful. What you want to say, sure, you have level 1, but you've missed out on answering questions 2, 3, and 4, and here's why it's important. That pointed feedback usually you get in product companies when you're doing actual product work, but if you want to go outside and above that, you need to build what I would call as your personal board of directors or board of knowledge builders who can help you, and that requires for you to do the hard work of convincing someone to invest time enough to take a bet on you. So find that audience and that community who can take a bet on you and invest in you. That requires your personal effort. I per se, this is my approach to building it scalable, where I feel there's gaps in the knowledge. I'm trying to put out that. Because I want to help more people, I am unable to do very pointed activities. But in recent times, I've started trying as much as possible to also give pointed feedback to people's case studies and deconstructs. So if time permits, I'll help you. But otherwise, please do go out and find other product leaders who are willing to take their time out and help you. That's what I've done in the past. I've built my own personal repository, people who can help me in that direction. Any recommendations on learning systems thinking? See, again, there are good videos out there on YouTube about systems thinking. And usually the way I try to build my system thinking is not looking at products, but looking at other systems thinkers. For example, people who are working in eco-science, like, for example, who are responsible for managing nature, people who are responsible for managing large, complex financial systems, people who are responsible for managing large societal systems. These people have very good understanding of trying to make very complex systems very visually representable. And you're able to then see all the various actors, their relationships, and how they work together. So start looking at non-product people for systems thinking. There are really good videos out there on YouTube. I'll try to see if I can find such videos and start collating them as a playlist as well. You can go through those videos and then start seeing if they add value. I'll also see if there's any books that I have in my repository that I've consumed in the past which help with systems thinking. Okay, next question. Would love to engage in a session on monetization features, Zomato, Zepto, Swiggy, on building interesting offerings, and would like to know how we balance UX and revenue metrics. Sure, I'll try to see if I can work on one such case study. I did one in the direction of improving average order value for Zomato, Swiggy, and Zepto. You can find that on my channel. It's about 8 hours long. As you can notice, I do things slow and long. So if you have the patience for 8 hours, you can go through it at depth as to how we approach a monetization problem or revenue generation problem such as AOV. And you can see how you can think about it from a UX problem, from a strategic problem, from a feature level problem, etc. as well. How product leaders can do deconstruct? Well, the same approach that anybody else does. I don't think there's any different approach to a product leader doing deconstruct. Maybe what you can additionally focus on is taking strategy problems, but then I would park that as a strategy deconstruct and not try to unnecessarily complicate it in product deconstruct, because then you lose the essence of getting into the nitty gritties of good product thinking. And I would like to draw the line with good strategic thinking. There are overlaps, but good strategic thinking has other components that requires for one to pay attention, which may not necessarily come in product thinking. So that's where I'd like to draw the line. Good books, videos on behavioral psychology, UX, systems thinking, etc. What I will do is I'll try to collate over the next couple of weeks a sort of good books that I found value in terms of psychology, UX, and systems thinking, and share it on both the WhatsApp group and as well as probably see if I can create a list on YouTube and share it so that you can consume it. Awesome. It seems that we've come to the end of questions. Maybe we have about 2 to 3 minutes left before I'd like to wrap up. Any other last questions that you'd like to answer, let me know. And then we can bring this session to an end. Okay, great question from Vaibhav. After deconstructs, how can we effectively package the solution, approach the stakeholders for alignment? This is a topic that I can probably speak another, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 hours. Give me a day, I'll talk about a day as well. The reason being, stakeholder management and selling to stakeholders is an incredibly nuanced and complex topic. The TLDR, the short story of it is, as with building products, selling a story to stakeholders involves for you to understanding your stakeholders. Just like when you build a product, it involves trying to understand what are their aspirations, abilities, constraints, ambitions, that which is said and that which is not said. In order for you to sell a good solution to a stakeholder, you need to know all of these things about your stakeholder. What is your stakeholder's aspirations, ambitions, constraints, disabilities? And I say disabilities, it means what they cannot do because systems are pulling them down, or there are things that you cannot see, pressure points they're having in life. Now, if you can't see this complete picture, you will be building a solution which you are very excited about, but you don't know where they're coming in from. So to pitch a good solution, it starts by you understanding your stakeholders. Not too different from product management. To build a good solution to your audience, you need to know what their problems and their constraints are. So you need to know what your stakeholders' problems really are. What they say versus what they mean versus what they do are very different. So it really requires for you to build the ability to read your stakeholders very, very detailed, and then building patterns upon it, and therefore identifying what those patterns mean to what they actually want as solutions. And then when you present your solution, they'll go like, wow, this is exactly what I was thinking. What they say versus what they mean versus what they do are very different things. So if you know that, you will start paying very, very close attention to your stakeholders. Over a period of time, you will build a similar repository of stakeholder patterns and therefore identify the right sort of solutions to build for them and know how to package even your solution in the light of the solution that they want to consume at the end of the day. So I hope that gives you some clarity on how to sell your solution to stakeholders. Would you do a strategy breakdown sometime? Let me think over it. It's something that's on the cards. It's just that there is a lot of product craft that is being asked. I'm just trying to prioritize the most pressing problems in the ecosystem right now with the most interested set of folks. So strategy is on the cards, but I haven't yet put it on the calendar yet onto the specific time. So what I really want to do first is get the basic product craft solved for first, and then move on to strategy. So give me some time to come back to strategy. But in the meantime, if I can do some quick tidbits on strategy, at least high level thinking or some broad directional sense, which gives you some leverage, I'll try to put out some short YouTube videos in that direction. All right. Cool. With that, we are at 2:00. We're probably an hour overboard, but I'm only hoping it's for the right reasons. This video is going to be available, I think, almost immediately on YouTube. Again, humble request to all of you folks who have stayed thus far. Please do give your feedback in the comment sections. It helps me learn and it helps me do a better job of helping you. And therefore also making me, fine tune my methodology and approaches. I'm not perfect. I'm also learning, and every opportunity that I get to learn, I will learn. And your feedback helps me. So whatever has been done really well, please share that and be honest enough to also tell me that, hey, Deepak, this was great, but this was one thing that I could not understand. It could be the medium that we're using to explain is not working out well. It could be the way I explained did not work out well. All of that is valuable feedback to me because it's my responsibility to help you understand. It's not your onus. It's my responsibility to help you see things through. The one disadvantage I do have with live is I don't have the ability to understand where you come in from. That interactivity is being lost out, and I'm losing out because I'm trying to solve for a lot more people. And it's yet something I'm trying to figure out between scale of people reach versus having that close knit interaction. So give me some time to figure out the right balance. So please forgive me that I am not able to spend enough time understanding your world, your universe, your thinking process, and working backwards from that to where I see. That's where the true gap gets covered. But I'm hoping this gives you some starting point to start thinking of how to think about something like deconstructing, getting into the details. Uh, Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn with those specific pointed questions as well. I will try my best to answer all of those questions over a period of time so that whatever gaps there were that could not be addressed because of this one directional channel or chat was not effective enough, I'll try to answer it through LinkedIn or any other channel. If you're an active part of my community on WhatsApp, will take my time out to answer that in the community so that a lot of other folks directly benefit as well. So thank you all for being a very, very patient audience and sticking through for a good 3 hours. It gives me a lot of joy to do what I do right now and to see all of you being so deeply engaged and asking very important questions and spending 3 hours on a Saturday improving your product craft. Like I say in many forums that I catch up, it's for a great selfish reason that I do this because when you go out and build great products, my life gets better. I get to see great products. I get to use great products. I don't have to be frustrated, and I get very, very happy about it. And the world, therefore, as a place, just becomes a better place when everybody gets to use fantastic products, right? So, thank you all for investing a good 3 hours of your time to getting your product craft like really, really well done. Do not stop with this class. Go and practice. Pick that one product that you want to like go deep into for the next 1 quarter and get at it. This theory alone is not going to stop. It's like you watching videos on Maggie noodles and then stopping that. Like this Maggie noodles is so easy to make. When you start making is when you realize how difficult it is, right? So don't stop here. Use this as a foundation. Use this as your book. Keep coming back to this over and over again. But what I really would love for some of you to do is go home and pick one product and start attacking for the next quarter. And after 1 quarter, I see even a few of you attacking this problem and then sharing it with me and say, Deepak, I spent the last 1 quarter attacking this, and I'd love for you to give me some good feedback. I will do whatever it takes you to give that feedback. I promise you that. But do that. I really, really humbly request of you. That's when you learn. That's where value add comes to you in your life. Just listening to what I have to say is just theory. It's very different to, again, watch videos of swimming versus jumping into the pool. It's very different to watch a video of Maggie making versus actually going into the kitchen, putting that Maggie, throwing in water and learning how to control that flame. Real skills come in product by doing, not by listening. The learning or listening is just to cover some awareness gap. What I'm doing at best is awareness, but your skill at the end of the day is you practicing, right? So please go home and practice. It's your time. You don't have to, like you need to be making yourself accountable. That's all I'll have to say. If you want to get better, you're your accountability coach. You need to make yourself responsible for it and you invest your time towards it. Take help from friends and families, take help from other folks as well. But you are ultimately responsible for your craft. Make yourself accountable. Spend the next quarter picking one product and doing one fantastic deconstruct and send it to me. And if I find one, I will stand on top of a building and say, this is what looks like a damn good deconstruct. I will scream on top of from the world to say that this is what a good one looks like. So please do that. I'm looking forward to seeing one such deconstruct. So thank you for taking your time out and really, really appreciate you investing time into your product craft. Really, really means a lot. Thank you. Give yourself a big pat on the back as well and for taking your time out. Hopefully I shouldn't be eating at your lunchtime now. So please do spend some time resting, recovering, and come Monday, hopefully you should be able to get back to picking one problem and attacking it. Oh, thanks, Rina, for a great voice. But at this point of time, my voice is a little coarse from speaking for 3 hours straight. So yeah, thank you all. Really, really appreciate it. Have a good day. Thank you. All right, I'm going to end the stream now. Bye bye, folks. See you.